so. Especially we were ready.
You're ready, huh?
I'm going to call the meeting to order. Will the board secretary take the roll?
Mr. Jim Bard.
Here.
Mr. Dwayne Burt.
Here.
Mr. Levi Kressler.
Here.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly.
Here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Here.
Mr. Fred Scott.
Here.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger.
Here.
Mr. Charlie Suiters.
Here.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Present. Everybody, please stand for the pledge. I think we still have this little flag up there. I pledge allegiance. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children in this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. This meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. May we now have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions on behalf of the students of the Shippensburg School District. Thank you. Before we do the agenda approval, Dr. Moyer, are there any changes or deletions or additions?
Thank you, President Butterball. There actually are several. Under reports, number 3, under the superintendent's report, item 3D and 3E, terrace metrics and the Care Solace presentation has been added for discussion. And then also, and it is regarding an agreement, and it's on the agenda for discussion. The effective school solutions presentation, also the same thing. And then also item number 6 under the discussion agenda, 6L, the effective school solutions LLC. We added this agreement for discussion. 6M, the proposal from Southampton Township to create a connector road. That is on the discussion agenda. Scott Mack could not be here personally tonight, but he will plan on coming to the next school board meeting and talk to us personally. He has also encouraged us to, in advance, just call for any board member or anyone to call and ask him questions. Either Christy or I, one, will get his contact information to you if you don't already have it. And then 6N, that was added pretty late this afternoon, dealing with a discussion item for the portable toilets. That's it.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Suiters. Is there a second?
Fred Scott seconds.
Second by Mr. Scott. Roll call.
Mr. Jim Bard.
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt.
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler.
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly.
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott.
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger.
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters.
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christy. We'll now move on to public comment. We have 2 public comment sections right now. The first public comment period here is for any items that are listed on the agenda. If you do have a public comment, we invite you to the podium. Please state your name and your address and whether you're a district resident, and then the board welcomes your comment. And before we just take anybody up, let me see if there's anybody. Josh Mowry? Okay. I can't read the first name. Harris? Roger? Okay. All right. Anybody else wish to make a public comment regarding an agenda? Come on up.
Probably the same behalf as these gentlemen. My name's Craig Purdue. I'm at 401 Scott Drive beside the elementary school and intermediate school. And what I'm commenting on is the addition to the road or the connector. You guys annotate that it's about safety concerns. I live there, and people currently drive down that road about 45, 50 miles an hour, don't stop at the stop signs. If you add a connector, they're just going to keep going faster, and they're still not going to stop. I believe it's more of a danger for the actual kids that are in that neighborhood as it go to that school, kids that play at that playground. So I would ask to consider that, not have the connector road, because people will fly through there, and more traffic is not a help to safety, it's a hurt. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate your comment. Anyone else? Yep, come on up, microphone.
Roger Hand. I moved to Shippensburg about 8 years ago. I lived in Northern Virginia for the better part of 65 years. And 30 years we lived in Oakton, Virginia. And we had moved to a nice house on a nice neighborhood road with very little traffic. And within about 5 years after we moved there, it became a bypass because people found that if they used our road, they could bypass a major area in downtown Oakton. And what was a 25-mile-an-hour speed zone road became a high-speed bypass, heavy traffic, and we did all we could to slow that traffic down. And we installed speed humps, we installed four-way stop signs, we had radar controlled speed signs. Didn't do any good. Vandalism increased. Of course, the traffic increased. We had accidents where two teenage boys were killed driving at high speed on that road. So what I'm getting to is if this connector road is built, we're going to have the very same thing as we had in Oakton. We're going to have the very same thing on Holler Avenue. It's going to increase traffic. It's going to increase pollution, noise pollution, environmental pollution. It's an area where children play. It's an area where people ride their bikes. And for them to add a connector road, to make that a through road, I would highly recommend not doing it based on the experience that we had when we lived in Oakton, Virginia. So I would highly recommend that that not be approved. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger, for your comment.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the reports. Franklin County Career Center report, Mr. Burt.
Thank you very much. Just a few items tonight. The next meeting of the Joint Operating Committee of the Franklin County Career and Technology Center, which is the operating board of the school, will be this Thursday night at 7 p.m. To highlight a couple of things that we'll be dealing with, first of all, we've talked a couple of times about the superintendent of record for the school. And we do now have notification from the Chambersburg Vice President, Mr. Ed Norcross, that their school, who is next in line, does wish to skip because they're involved in a superintendent search. And so we will be planning to name the next in line, which is the Fanet Metal Superintendent, Dr. Tara Will, as Superintendent of Record for the Career Center. And then, as I have also mentioned previously, with the help of our solicitor, we will be looking to change the Articles of Agreement in fairness to Chambersburg such that it will note that a skip school would then be next in rotation. Otherwise, in the spirit of fairness, it would be 15 years before we got back around to Chambersburg. The appointments are 3 years, and there are currently 6 partners in the school. So that's how that will be resolved. The next superintendent of record will be Fanet Metal Superintendent Dr. Tara Will. And then finally, I just wanted to show a couple of pictures here of some work additional work that's being done to the Career Center. I mentioned that in this past school year that we added another program, and we're always looking at programming to make sure the programming is relevant and adding programming as well as the facilities in the school. And we added an early childhood education program at the school one semester last year. It'll be a full year this year. And here's a couple of slides that show the renovation and construction of a new playground to support that program. Next slide, please. And we're very, very excited about the new program and the change in facilities here. That concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Burt. Safety and Security Committee, I believe, met. Is there any report?
Yes, we discussed the needs of the school district, especially about the securing of the buildings. We had a real good discussion about that. Mr. Chad, our maintenance man, Chad, can you come up here and tell the community what we discussed about the buildings and what you think we need to do to proceed? Also put in about Nancy Grayson, please, the equipment there.
Oh, the playground equipment? Well, to start off with the Nancy Grayson playground equipment, I mean, we've talked about this before, but it's in bad shape. So I took some board members back there a couple weeks ago, and yeah, we talked about looking at what we need to do to replace that and make it look better. So there's no doubt about that. There are some swing sets. We're getting the spider web taken down. We're actually just going to get that out of here. We're going to try to do that this week. I wanted to do it today, but that didn't work out as planned. And so that's the main plan with the Nancy Grayson playground. The other issue is what I would really like to recommend, I think it's kind of gaining momentum, is to get like door security sensors on each one of our doors in this entire school district. And I spoke with some other school districts about it, and not all school districts have it yet, but they are also in planning and getting this accomplished. And what it would be, we can make it as big or as small as what we want, but we will put sensors on every door. That way no doors could be propped anymore. 30 seconds, 1 minute goes by. We could program it that we get a text on our phone or an alarm goes into the security office letting us know that there is in fact a door prop somewhere. And, we could program it that if a door is open on a weekend, we'll know that a door is open on a weekend. So, I got a meeting on Thursday coming up with the company. There's another company I want to call because we're going to have to get, a couple quotes and opinions on how to get this accomplished. But, I think right now, like, as far as safety and what we can do, we have doors propped open everywhere along the school district, and it's it's everybody, students, teachers, athletics, my crew, I don't know who it is. It's just a lot better to make it foolproof than to count on constantly driving it in everybody. We need to make it with the technology today that we know when there is a door propped open. So that was what I think was the biggest thing that came out of safety and security. Did approve to put some grant money towards that project. Forget what that was, 150,000, something like that. So, yeah.
Either 154.2 or 152.4.
Yeah.
Transfer
So,
my number.
yeah, something like that. So that's a good start. But yeah, it will definitely get us, get this ball rolling, and hopefully we can come up with a good plan to get these doors, get this school more secured.
Chad, have you talked to Site Logic about the middle school since it's already under?
So they're putting in that, not a part of the main bid, but like an alternate to put sensors on those doors, on the addition. Now, it may not work with the system we end up putting in. It may work fine. We'll have to see what they have. But in this, we got to get a system that's integrated with our next gen system, which is, what all the schools will be going to after these projects are done. So, but yeah, we have talked about it.
Thanks.
There is one point I think we need to address the back door of the high school where the auditorium and the basketball comes, or to the gym come in. Right now, when a student comes in after school, they have to walk all the way around the building to get in. We've discussed this before. I think with school coming up, we need to address that issue. It's not going to cost that much to put a camera there, a buzzer, a monitor in the office. The kids can come in, they can buzz them in the school without having to walk all the way around the school, especially in a bad weather. You think that it might be very expensive to do that?
No, I don't think it would be. I mean, it would cost a little bit of money, but nothing outrageous. That,
I would like us as a board to pursue, or having pursue that before school starts. I don't know how no one.
Well, I'm unclear. I thought, I'm not sure as to whether that, would actually sound safe. On one hand, having a camera and being able to let a student in is certainly not a problem. But is there any possibility for someone else to get in at that point that we wouldn't want in? And I say that because this conversation ties closely to, I believe, to a renovation, potential renovation for the high school to add a small bank of offices and so forth back here at this entrance, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, but that, I don't know how long that's going to take. And the kids are coming, and all it is a monitor. I mean, they got a buzzer at the front office. The secretary sees who's at the school, who's at the door. They show their ID, and they open the door. The door can't be opened unless the person at the desk lets them in. I understand that building's going to be remodeled, but that could be next year sometime. Before that, we get to that.
Oh, it would be longer than that. Are you talking middle school? You talking to,
In high school, I'm talking.
Yeah, high school. It's not going to. I mean, to put that in. I mean, we're talking probably 3 years before that would ever be completed.
It's not that expensive. That should be a monitor, just like, and you go to any business or
Well,
whatever.
I think yes, and I think it would probably be, more in the 2 or 3 years before the high school renovation became a reality. But I think the point would be, if it meets all the standards of the safe school entrances and so forth, that all those thoughts and processes that we would use in any other of our safe school entrances, if it meets all those conditions, then I don't have any problem with it.
You do that, Chad? Should it meet all safe schools to put that camera and that monitor in there? Could it be done under safe schools?
Well, it would be a part of it. I mean, they would do that. As far as the money, I mean, we could do that out of our fund balance. It wouldn't be that much to do that.
Is that
If that's what you would like to do. I mean, yeah, the later projects would cover that, because you would have coverage in the front and coverage in the back. But
Well, in the other safe school entrances, is it a one door and into the building, or is it into an
breezeway,
airlock?
yeah, you would have a breezeway in between. So that would be a difference, is you wouldn't have that
It might be a
breezeway.
Difference.
Right,
So
that
there-
would be a
there-
difference.
There's a point to consider,
That is something yeah. Yeah, I'd have to look into that. Like, basically, there is no breezeway in between. There's no second set of locked doors. So I don't know how that would fall under that. That would be something to look into.
But it could be done in the first set of doors, couldn't it?
Well, it could, but that's
what-
the only set of doors. I know, like right now, they want you to go through 2 sets of doors.
But when they got to the first set of doors, they had a button on the wall. Camera looks down on them. Whoever's in the office sees them. They see there's a student or a teacher or whatever. Hit the buzzer, hit the lock, and it locks the set of doors, and they walk in.
You could do that, yes.
That's what I'm talking.
Yeah, it could be done. Now, would the safe school policies, and would they have an issue with just having one set of locked doors to go through? That's something to look into to make sure. I can't answer that.
I think on some along the schools I've been along, there's one set of locked doors before entering the building.
And that goes back to another thing, is another cool thing about that other system that I'm looking at on Thursday is we would go away from keys. We could go away from keys on the outside entirely. On the outside, and we could also, if we chose to go on keys, even in teachers' rooms entirely, if we want to get that in depth, where it would be these cards or student IDs that could get everybody in. So basically, I mean, you have a situation now where we have 3 past employees that are running around. They may have sets of keys that we haven't been able to get back. So that would get rid of that situation. It would just be computer system. Students could scan in and out of the school with their badges, and we'd be able to know where they scan in, where they scan out, what time, and everything. So that would be something else that would be good about this new system.
Thanks. Yep. Move on to the curriculum report. Sherry?
Actually have the foundation committee report.
Not a committee.
Do,
I think we have
is
that
Al gonna
on.
go over that?
I think that, we can probably do that under 3DB.
The superintendent's report stuff, I will turn it over to you for
no,
that.
go ahead.
No, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sherry?
So the curriculum report, last board meeting, Mrs. Everly asked for an update on our summer school program. For the elementary, it's difficult to provide an update because we haven't done our beginning of the year screenings for students, but I can at least give some information on that and the secondary. So our K-5 Summer Academy ran from June 13th to July 14th. We had ELA on Mondays and Tuesdays and math on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 10 until noon. The students were invited to participate based off of Acadians, iReady, and teacher recommendations, starting with Tier 3 students. So if I've gone over, like if you recall when I went over our comprehensive plan, Tier 1 students are students that are successful with just plain core instruction. Tier 2 students need a little bit more support. Tier 3 students need the most support. So we wanted to focus on them first for our summer academy. I will say that we've called a lot of families, our elementary principals, our elementary summer academy coordinators calling a lot of families that fell into these categories, and we didn't have super great participation in all grades, and I'll show you guys that in a few moments. The goal for K to 5 was to provide academic enrichment to reduce the summer slide entering into the 22-23 school year. So the summer slide, typically students leave school in May and they're up to here. And then June, July, August, they're not involved in anything really academic. So when they start in September, they're back down to here again. And then you have to spend like a month or so to catch them back up to where they were in May when they left. So our goal for this, since we already have students that are struggling, we don't want them to fall further behind and take a month to catch back up to where they were. So our goal is, since they participated in this program, when we do our beginning of the year screenings in late September, early October, that they'll at least be where they were in May, but hopefully even further up from that. So when we look at the numbers, we asked different students to participate in ELA than in math, but there was some overlap. Some students participated in both ELA or math, depending on what their needs were. In kindergarten, we had a lot that we were asking, but we only got 8 to commit to ELA and 9 to commit to math. This is in addition to these 8 and 9. 4 students were invited to participate, said they were going to participate, but never showed up. In first grade, we have 11 students for ELA and 12 for math. 1 student was invited to participate, said they were going to participate and just did not show up. Second grade was our best participating grade, so we had 16 for ELA, 17 for math, and 1 who didn't show up. Third grade was, I think, our lowest based off the need. We had a lot of needier students in third grade, but we couldn't get them to want to come. So we had 7 and 7 for ELA and math, and 4 that said they were coming and did not show up. Fourth grade had pretty decent attendance for, what we were calling. Most of the people did say that they were going to participate. So we had 12 in ELA, 15 in math, but 5 just didn't show up when they said they were going to participate. Fifth grade, 11 and 10. So if we look total K to 5, 65 students participated in ELA, 60 participated in math, and 20 of them said they were going to participate and did not show up. For our... All right, I'm just going to stay back here. Can you all hear me? All right. For our...
Can I ask a quick question before you go on? Can we?
Sure thing.
Is this Tier 2 and Tier 3 students that were invited, or just
So
Tier 2
after we
students?
did Tier 3, we got the lower level of Tier 2, so the ones who are almost Tier 3, but we didn't want to go like the whole way. We didn't want them to be so widely grouped in that small group.
So all of Tier 3 and some of Tier 2 were
There were
invited?
some lower level Tier 2s that were almost Tier 3 students, yeah.
And I'm curious just like what percentage of this represents of folks who were invited to attend that did attend?
It depended on the grade level, but I would say we were probably about 50% acceptance, so we would call.
So
the
50% of those who were invited actually attend.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry, in what ways were they actually invited when you guys went through that
So
process?
there were letters first sent home, and when we didn't get responses from the letters, then we called home, like the principals and our virtual coordinator, or not our virtual, our summer school coordinator called home. And then when we didn't get the returns from that, then we got a new group of kids, and they were called home, and then a new group of kids called home. So we tried to go up until really the last day of school. They were still calling to try to get students to participate.
Okay.
So moving on to 6 to 12. 6 to 12 students were eligible if they failed certain courses, but I'll go through the dates. That started on June 14th and lasted until July 14th. Because we were looking at credit recovery, we wanted to make sure that the students were in a certain number of hours to give them credit recovery for that. So they did theirs every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We had 2 time sessions. The first time session was from 8 to 10, and the second time session was from 10 to 12. We offered various courses. So in 6th through 8th grade, we offered it as math and ELA credit recovery. So to be eligible, first we went to students who failed both math and ELA. Then we went to students who failed math 4 ELA, and another core class. Then when we still didn't have participation, we went to you just failed math or ELA. So we had that tiered approach to trying to invite those students as well. And in grades 9 through 12, it was credit recovery. So we had 12 different courses being offered from tech ed, art, ELA, math, social studies, science, physical education, and family consumer science. The reason why we had some of those different courses like tech ed, art, family consumer science, and physical education, those are graduation requirements for our students. And as I've talked to you guys before, we're starting to get to the level where some of these classes are getting overly populated. So summer school, trying to get students to have credit recovery so they don't have to come back this fall and take the FCS class or take the phys ed class and create more students in the class. So we offered that. Again, the goal of the 6 to 12 was more to provide the credit recovery opportunities for the students to get what they needed to get a passing grade in the class. Now, I do want to say a passing grade is a 65%. So even if they went through, we had students pass 7th grade where they passed all of their classes, they were like 66%. So when we talk about passing grades, even though a passing grade to me is like 90%. You've got a 90%, you're good, you passed. But, when we're talking about the overall what receives a credit, that they did enough work during these courses to get a 65% to get their credit recovery. So overall, the student participants with, again, we had those tiered approaches of trying, especially 6 to 8. 9 to 11, we just offered it to whomever failed those courses. 6 to 8, we had 9 complete with a passing grade and 3 non-completions. Non-completions for the secondary, we didn't count attendance for the elementary because we just wanted the students to come in and try to support them whatever ways we could. Secondary, because we're giving credit for it, we had attendance requirements. So since it was 15 days, they were allowed to miss 3 days, meaning 1 week during the summer. Because families go on vacation, we want to be acknowledging like that families go on vacation. So students were allowed to miss 3 days of summer academy. On the 4th day, they were considered non-completion. On top of that, they were allowed to be late 3 times. Now, if they were more than 15 minutes late for a course, then we counted that as an absent. But we really tried to make it where it was very accessible to students because we want them to be successful. So when we look at these non-completions, those are students that either missed 4 days of summer academy or had 4 tardies to summer academy. So in 7th grade, we had 18 students that completed with passing grade and 1 non-completion. 8th grade had 11 students with 2 non-completions. And then when we get up through 9 through 11, 45 completed with passing grade, but we had 22 non-completion. So again, that's 22 students that either missed more than 3 days or had more than 4 tardies, or more than 3 tardies, so having 4 total tardies. So if we look at that 9 to 11, that's where I'm really concerned because these students, actually Mr. Burkholder was in here earlier and he said one of the girls who didn't complete, one of the highest grades in his class, the 3rd week, so she made it through week 1, 2, and 3. Then the 3rd week, she missed all 3 days, the 4th week, she missed all 3 days. Then the 5th week, she missed another day, and after phone calls and trying to figure out what's going on, she just never called, never came back, just didn't complete. So it is sad when you look at it like that because the opportunity was there to get students the credits.
Was transportation supplied for all grade levels?
All grade levels. So they had transportation sheets to complete if they needed the transportation to get in here. And actually, well, Randy wasn't here, but Mrs. Seymour was setting up the transportation. She was instrumental in that.
How do those numbers compare to the after-school tutoring program?
So the after-school tutoring program is different at the elementary than in the secondary. So at the elementary, we had very good participation because we had to hand select the students, just like we did here, where they were hand selected to participate in the program. Now, I will say that this year, doing the elementary program again, we're going to try to keep it at 6 weeks, do multiple sessions at 6 weeks where we're picking students. Last year, we were doing it more at like 12 weeks, and you could see that the students were just getting fatigued as the weeks went on. We're going to try it shorter bouts this year to keep the engagement going through. At the secondary level, it was more of a drop-in tutoring type of activity, and students really weren't coming through for frequent tutoring. So one of the ideas that I want to fly through this year is seeing if we can do some more engaging type of activities where, you know, especially at the middle school level where students are participating in like STEM projects that will help out with their communication, that will help out with their mathematics without saying, you're staying after school today to get tutored in mathematics. Not too many 14-year-olds want to do that. That doesn't seem super exciting to many 14-year-olds. So trying to change it up this year to get more participation, especially at that secondary level. And I know Mr. Martin last year, at the high school, we had him doing sort of, not really a club, it was specifically for helping to integrate art and literacy skills. But he was doing a horror activity after school where students were coming in and they needed help with their writing. And he was doing like a teen horror journal or something. He sent it out like every month to us where students would write articles and critique different films and things like that. So he was really working a creative way to help with writing again, rather than saying, hey, stay after school today and get tutored in English class.
Jerry, do we have any data now, with the school year ending, getting ready to transition into another one, with the grades pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic of whether we've closed the gap at all in any way?
So we have some testing data from the PSSAs and things. So we are not up to, like, I've gotten preliminary testing scores. They're just preliminary. That's why I haven't made them public yet, because they can be changed after PIMS data goes through and they determine which students apply to us and which students don't apply to us. But we are closing the gap from where we were pre-pandemic to where we were last year. So we're getting closer to closing that gap, but have we closed that gap yet? No.
I don't mean just by test scores. I mean by actual, like, report card data.
Report card data, I feel like, and I'll look up at Mrs. Luffy, I feel like the grades are getting back to stabilizing. The problem is we have a population of students post-pandemic that would have done enough to get their grades to passing prior to the pandemic, but right now they're not there. They feel like they're sinking. So that's why we have these credit recovery situations.
I just remember when we were in the middle of it, you guys had made by school and by grade to show, kind of the red, the yellow, the green, as far as by grade level and by building. I'm just wondering if that's something that you would be able to put together at some point so that we could actually see the data.
Yeah, I can get something together for that, for like grade level by grade level.
Thank you.
If you give me, you let me get through the next like 2 weeks and get a grant written. Oh, perfect. I will.
I have a question over here, Chair, over here. I guess this falls under you. Do we have who would, like, internships with businesses and that and everything? Do we have somebody to correlate that within the school district?
Yes, we have Krista Akers. She's our co-op coordinator. So it's internships for mostly juniors and seniors. She has started working with some sophomores as well to get them out into the community to job shadow and do different co-op opportunities, do internships, paid internships. So we do have somebody here that does do that.
And can we see how many students participate in this or opportunities within the school district?
Of course, yes.
I hear we have one, but I only ran into, I guess, one student so far that I know participated. So I'd just like to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very popular program, so we have a lot of students participating. I mean, it's not something where we can say every senior participates, but we have a lot of students participating in it.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say that I can empathize with the students who might feel that fatigue after school. That's like saying, Jerry, you've done your 8 hours now because you struggled during the pandemic. Now you need to stay an extra hour after school several days a week. And ultimately, that's not their fault. I would really like to see some numbers or the efficacy of how many students are impacted by the after-school program versus if we re-looked at where that money was allotted to hire, whether if it's an ELA teacher to float, to pull those students during school hours, because ultimately, they should not have to feel drained or feel punished or made to feel less than because they didn't get it and they're still struggling.
I would completely agree with you with that if I could reallocate those funds. But the federal government says that I have to spend a certain amount of money on after-school programs, and they say specifically after-school programs, and they say specifically summer academy programs. So though I agree with you on that, I can't spend that money if the federal government says I have to do it on this. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate it. As always. Move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Moyer?
Thank you, President Budeball. I have a number of items in my report, and I'll be delegating to a few individuals to help me out as to present. First thing, though, the state auditors recommend that we report our activity fund balances for the Board of School Directors on a quarterly basis. Those account balances as of June 30th are listed below. Detailed listing for the senior high and middle school accounts are also attached. I would like, before I go any further, I do want to do a shout out to Chad and our maintenance team. It wasn't until about almost 4 p.m. this afternoon until we restored electricity here at the high school. This was the only building affected. Deb Luffy and her team and Sherry and many others did a nice job pivoting and making sure that it was a productive day. I'm pretty sure, as disappointed as I was to not have electricity this morning, as I was giving my brief talk, the staff here had a much better attitude than I did, and I appreciate that they had such a great attitude in dealing with all that. So a big shout out to Chad. The maintenance crew, in addition to all the things that they did with losing electricity, they were moving $20,000 worth of food from the frozen items so that it didn't get spoiled. So again, kudos to the entire team there. Next, I'd like to address a little bit of information regarding the Greyhound Foundation. You have, for the first time ever, I think, a balance sheet from the Greyhound Foundation. And I just want to say, for those of you that really appreciated the partnership that we had there and encouraged us to maintain and improve that partnership, I believe that was a really good move on our part. And I'd like to turn things over to Mrs. Eberly, who attended with myself and a few others just this past week at the Greyhound Foundation meeting.
So the Greyhound Foundation met on Thursday, August 19th. The foundation would greatly appreciate if the remaining balance of the flagship Proud balance was spent as soon as possible. The Eagles Crossing Golf Tournament is being held September 17th at 8 a.m. The sponsorships from the golf tournament are where the majority of the monies come from, and they are still in need of sponsors and vendors for that event. And they thought that it would be helpful if the district could post this on their district homepage, along with just sharing on the Facebook page or social medias. There will be raffles, 50-50, the lottery tree, chicken barbecue dinners will also be available, and it's going to be a great time. Mini grants, so make sure that the mini grants are viable. The foundation does not provide funds to those items that are already budgeted for, and mini grants need to directly impact the students and are distributed in $1,000 increments. And the deadline for that is September 16th by 4 p.m. The committee shared that in years past, the requests were pretty heavy from the high school, occasionally a few from the intermediate school, and they've never received a request from any of the elementary schools. So please, elementary school, teacher, counselor, nurse, please apply to those grants because they want to help, they want to give money, and those grants can also go to the PBIS incentives. So make sure that you're filling those out. The foundation would like to partner with the Shippensburg School District to hire a full-time executive director, which would also serve as a grant writer to the district. They hope to have this position filled by January and would like the district to help fund this position to the best of their ability. I did make sure that each of you have a copy of that job description. It is just a draft, so just to kind of look over that. And as Chad stated about the Nancy Grayson playground being in rough shape, the foundation, we took pictures to the foundation, passed them around, and they have committed a minimum of $10,000 to kick off that playground fund. That's it.
Steph, I talked to Phil Fag a little bit about this about a month and a half ago, and he didn't have any answers for me yet. When you're talking about a full-time executive director, was there any conversation regarding what the salary or pay rate would be?
It was not. They realized that this position, because it's full-time, they want someone who's gonna wake up in the morning and, think, eat, breathe the Greyhound Foundation to take it to the next level. So they have not given a price. They are also just really being, selective with who they choose because they have high expectations.
Understood. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Eberly. Good job. I don't have anything else to add to that. Do want to say a big thank you to Randy Bybee, our transportation coordinator. We had a very successful bus orientation meeting. Most of you know, you drive past any school and you see a lot of signage and needs for bus drivers. We had a middle school cafeteria full of bus drivers, very energetic and enthusiastic. And as you're well aware, board, we met a couple of times this summer with Boyo, our administrative team, our transportation director or coordinator, and we talked a lot about what we can do to recruit and retain bus drivers, and I think we're really moving in a good direction in that regard. Chief Scott mentioned a little bit about facilities and had Chad talk about the physical facilities, but also we're looking at two other areas with our Safety and Security Committee. The mental health component as well as security personnel possibly in the school. Tonight, we have a couple of guests that Lauren will introduce to you regarding that mental health component and what our plan is there to be really proactive and see what we can do to flag kids that are really struggling. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Lauren.
Good evening. So just as you may recall, last year Shippensburg administration was approached by the Shippensburg Community Resource Coalition and a partnership for better health regarding a grant opportunity that they were actually going to file on our behalf. So one less that Sherry has to write, right? And basically that grant allowed for mental health screening and service delivery for our students. At that time, last March, we did invite Ms. Sonia Payne from the SCRC to present regarding that grant opportunity and the potential for funding for those. So we've invited Ms. Payne here tonight, and then also a subsequent presentation by Ms. Mel Shaver-Durham to basically explain a continuum of planning for both screening for our students in terms of their mental health needs, how we would respond to that screening, what our process would be, and ultimately a response or action step. So to very briefly lay the stage, I'll just kind of give some general overview. This screening is a universal mental health screener. It is to service all students in the district. It is not exclusive to students with an exceptionality. It does service all students. We are hoping to pilot the universal screener at grades 4, 6, and 9. Those are obviously big transitional years. The screener is just that, a screener. It is not a diagnostic tool in any sense of the way. The district administration is recommending that we would have active parent consent. So there are other districts in the area that do utilize the same mental health screener, and they utilize what is called passive consent, right? So if you don't hear from parents, the student is opted in. We are not recommending that. We are recommending that parents have to actively give consent. If a parent wants to opt their child out of the screener, totally okay. So that's just some general foundation knowledge about the screener. What we will get from the screener is basically a student, depending on their responses, can flag in 3 areas: red, yellow, and green. As a district, we've met with some of our internal process as well as some of our proposed community resources. And so if a student flags red, we have an obligation to respond within 24 hours. We make contact. Now, we would not make contact with a student without first contacting a parent. So Should this screener be approved by the board, we would recommend a communication plan. Our recommended communication plan would be that we would, of course, make contact with a parent first within 24 hours prior to pulling a student to determine any additional steps that are necessary. Whenever you implement a screener, we now have an obligation to provide services and to supports for the students. So, as I mentioned, this screener is one piece. Second to the screener is what we like to kind of refer to as a concierge service. So say a student flags red, student is struggling with depression, for example, would reach out to the family, would say to the family, are you interested in pursuing additional services? Family may say yes. We may then offer a variety of services to that student. One of them may be Care Solace. Care Solace is basically a concierge that would contact agencies on the behalf of families. Again, families would have to opt in if they are interested in providing that service to that student. The other options that we would offer is perhaps we would offer school-based mental health services. Again, parents would have to opt in should they be interested in providing that service for their child. We acknowledge, though, whenever we do a screener like this, we may have a greater need than what we historically have had. The school system, it's really easy to see students who have externalizing behaviors, kids who are acting out. It's a little harder to find students who are struggling internally, right? So we hope that the mental health screener may help us to catch some of those students. One of the presentations that we're going to have this evening is also from Effective School Solutions. In addition to our current providers with Teen Line, with ALIF Counseling, which are already established, we would like to recommend additional consideration for Effective School Solutions. Effective School Solutions can offer, again, additional supports and services to our students. The good news is neither of these programs actually are going to cost anything in this pilot to the district. Harris Metrics and Care Solace is already 100% grant funded on the grant that SCRC wrote for us on our behalf. We would like to propose that Effective School Solutions be grant funded out of a grant that Sherry already referenced that is specific to students with mental health needs. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Payne and Ms. Shaver-Durham. They're going to present on both of those programs, and then certainly if there's additional questions, we can answer those as well.
Hi, I'm Sonia Payne from the Shippensburg Community Resource Coalition. It's nice to be back to share with all of you. One of the reasons why we pursued this grant is because the 2021 Pennsylvania Youth Survey, which is given in grades 6, 8, 10th, and 12, showed an increase of students that were experiencing depressive symptoms. So 51% of the students that took that survey are reporting that they have depressive symptoms now. And also the Shippensburg Area School District, our students report a higher level of depressive symptoms and thoughts than the surrounding counties. So this was something that was concerning to us as community members and also though as like collaborators with you guys, the school district. I have to say, you did a great job sort of explaining some things about Harris Metrics. And what I want to focus on is that when you think about this mental health screening, it is like having a blood pressure screening. When you go and get a blood pressure screening from, a nurse or maybe a medical assistant, they do not diagnose you, right? They just say, these are some things that may be concerning. You might want to bring them up to your doctor. Okay, so this is the same thing, and we are completely on board and want to work with the school district in developing the intervention plan, but also, or concierge plan, right? The concierge plan, but we also are hoping that we can provide support as well. So with Harris Metrics, some things that are beneficial is that we can, if this works well, we can reapply for the grant, probably up to 3 more times, is what the Partnership for Better Health has said. It is a new grant, which is why I can't say they said exactly that we can reapply for it. The results are available at individual classroom, grade, building, and district level. And the reason this is important is that so we can see, is there a grade that is struggling with a certain area? So this test is looking at risk and resiliency indicators. It is evidence-based, meaning that each indicators, those questions have been given to over 10,000 students to make sure that it is actually testing what it wants to be tested. Each indicator has a minimum of 3 peer-reviewed journal articles published on those indicators and how they are effective at helping to identify students that are in this red, at risk, yellow, struggling, or green, doing well. You also can track grades, right? So we can see this grade is struggling with one thing. And then if the grade comes back as struggling, Terrace Metrics has specific short lessons that are available for us to do with a classroom, with a whole grade for each of their indicators. And so again, that is really helpful for us on the intervention side, because not only are we able to say, hey, this student is struggling, we can say this classroom is struggling, we can say this grade is struggling with something, and then provide an intervention at a level before it gets before it becomes more problematic, right? So really, it will help us in our prevention and preventing more mental health concerns down the road. The other thing is that SCRC has 3 master level social work students. They will be available to help support this program. We have a bachelor's level student, which will require more supervision. But we also are committed, and we will also take care of the grant reporting, reapplying for it, so that it doesn't have any more, it's not a strain further on Sherry or whoever would be normally doing that grant reporting. And then I think you did a great job with Care Solace. The other thing to understand about Care Solace is that currently, from what I've been told, if a student needs outpatient services, the family is asked to call their insurance company to find a provider. When they call a provider, they're often told that there's a wait list. You can call back and see if there's an opening. So I don't know about you, but the hours that mental health providers are open, I'm often at work and I don't have time to call them every day. Or if I call over my lunch break, they may also be on lunch. What Care Solace does is make those daily phone calls for the family until an appointment is reached or services are found other places. And that also allows, the other thing that Care Solace does is they provide tracking. So every time a Care Solace staff makes that phone call, it goes into the database. And the school counselor or social worker would be able to look that up to see what agencies have been contacted, as well as what the results has been, and the first appointment goes in to the database so that they would know. And so we're trying to help alleviate this referral connection of the barriers to getting a mental health appointment when school-based may not be available or may not be an option. Yeah, questions? I'm looking and I'm feeling like there's questions.
I have a ton of questions.
Okay.
So I will say that I definitely agree, and I think we would all agree that mental health is a huge issue that's plagued our school district in the last couple of years, and we definitely need to do something about it. As a parent myself with children that have experienced those issues in the last couple of years, I do know how difficult it is to get your child in to see somebody and speak with them. It is a process that if you've not had to go through it, you will not understand it. But I have lots of concerns and questions. So I'm just going to rapid fire them to you. So with the screening questions, are we able, as a board, to get a hold of the questions that would be asked, to kind of look through those?
So Dr. Moyer has a copy of them. We have a copy. I think Rich gave us permission, correct?
Yes, so Dr. Moyer has already been provided a copy. Administration has already screened those. And so, yes, we would.
And if I may make a quick remark about that, because I've been involved in student assistance programs for about 3 decades, and also have gone through a lot of training, and I've seen various other tools that I've been uncomfortable with just by the wording of the questions. And frankly, I'll just say, in some of these surveys, when you take some of these self-perception surveys by the wording of the question, if you're not into destructive behaviors, or you're not, doing, drugs and alcohol, or having, premarital sex and things like that, you feel like I'm odd, and things like that. This survey, and again, having 2 daughters, 6 grandkids, I'd be very comfortable with them taking this, and I'd be very happy to provide this, make copies and provide this to every school board member. But one of the things before we went any further with this was I required to be able to take this and look at every question on there.
Okay.
The other thing about the questions is that we can modify every question as well as take out any question or area that we want. So they're very willing to work with us if there is something of concern.
Okay, and that was my next question, is who's writing the questions? Is that done at the school district level?
So Terrace Metrics, because it's evidence-based, Terrace Metrics is the one that has written the questions.
Okay.
But it is customizable.
Okay. Next question is what data is collected from each student?
In terms of like age, grade?
Yeah, all
Okay.
yes.
So what I know is it's just name, age, and grade.
Okay. You're sure about that, or is there a question mark?
From what I know, that's it. There's not there's not any like social security number or like home address or telephone, because that doesn't need to be collected, because we just need, really honestly, we just need their name. And then the school system already has all that other information.
Okay. And then once the assessments are completed, what happens to that data? Let's say we're in a contract with them for a year, and we decide a year from now to not renew that contract. What happens with that data at that point? From reading through the agreement, I've seen that we are owners of it, but they are also owners of it. So if we dissolved our agreement, what happens with that data from their perspective?
I don't have an answer to that,
Okay.
but I can find out.
Please, I appreciate that. And then just my other question is there a way without going through a third party that we could do this in-house within our district?
If you can pay someone another salary, it's a lot of work, like a lot.
The advantage of a evidence-based screener is that whenever you look at a mental health screener, you have to be very cautious that the questions aren't leading in one way or the other, right? The last thing that we want to do is influence a student in one way or the other when they're filling out an assessment in terms of their own mental health.
I totally agree.
So the fact that these are already evidence-based and reviewed over 10,000 students, those leading questions have already been teased out. Again, we have the ability to remove any question as a district that we feel that we would want to remove. But in terms of efficacy, it would be very challenging, I think, on our end to write questions that are reflective of an accurate response. And again, this is more strength-based as opposed to identifying needs. So we're looking at factors such as resiliency, factors such as grit. We're not looking at we're not looking at more negatively worded questions. These are more positively worded questions.
Okay, and then I see that it's already been implemented in the Big Spring district. Is there a point,
And
is there a point person in Big Spring that we could actually talk to?
Yes. So when we initially had some conversations, we have reached out to several district partners. And those district partners, we've already had some conversations. So example, our social workers and our counselors have said, what were the barriers? So yes, we do have contacts at those districts that have been willing to share their experiences and been gracious enough to share their missteps with us in terms of implementation. For example, don't administer every single building the same day. So we've been able to learn from a few of their mistakes.
I'm done hogging.
I have a quick question. So how many people in the organization and any other organizations and internally will have access to this data?
So in terms of what we will see, our goal is, for example, it's 3 different grade levels, right? 4th, 6th, and 9th. What our hope is a response team at each building. A response team would be comprised of our 3 school psychologists, designated school counselors, and I'm using that term specifically, I'm being vague when I say that specifically. And the reason for that is, for example, we would plan to administer the intermediate school first. We would ask, for example, perhaps a counselor at the high school level and a counselor at the middle school level to also be available. So members of our counseling staff, members of our social work staff, members from our SCRC planning
Just
team.
me.
Yep, just Sonia and my department would be the response team, and the building administration would be the response team that would be actively reviewing those flags and then making contact with families.
Is there a privacy agreement that each of them would, because I know you're not a school district employee.
Okay, so I've already signed a confidentiality agreement for the school district because of work that we do in the school anyway. So like the Gray Matter program, the Gray Matter group that we run here at the high school. But any of my other, if I would have other interns that would be assisting, I'll have to sign confidentiality agreements that, the information will not be shared.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Bill, but how long has Big Spring been in the program?
I believe it's our 3rd year. The Big Spring, we used it on, I don't know if
Well, that was originally Dr. Seppo's hope, was that we would
So,
do
most
that.
of the data that we've seen are like aggregated data. We don't see individual students. We get to see, percentages of who's falling in what category. I can attest, as a teacher school, when we did every grade level, and the timing of that coming out of the pandemic, and where kids were really kind of avalanche our counselors. We did the passive consent, and so the majority of our kids took that, and we also were so the through line on that is very, very strong, because we get red flags on who needs help. Those counselors reach out to the parents, and they have a resource right there to give to them. So we hand it off to the parents to make that decision, and then we're kind of out of the loop. And I say this truthfully, I don't know, how many kids are doing what. That's not really our side. It's about us screening those kids, and finding those kids that we don't know about, and then giving families options to pursue.
All right.
And as a parent, I can just give you a little bit of information. So my daughter actually took the Terrace metrics, and as a parent, I didn't get to see how she answered every question, but I got to see it in high level groups. Like somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, like hope, resiliency. So I could see where she scored in all those, and then it would give me a little bit information about each area as a parent, and then who to contact if, there were concerns.
Okay. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I could tell you wanted to.
Any other questions for me? And I will get back about what happens to the data if we would dissolve our partnership.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So again, this is a multi-phase approach. Our next presenter is Mel Shaver Durham. She is presenting from Effective School Solutions regarding possible Tier 2 strategies and some training and professional development. Again, this would be kind of a pocketed approach of a continuum that we're hoping to create.
Good evening, everyone. As Lauren said, my name is Mel Shaver Durham, and I'm the Director of District Partnerships for Effective School Solutions. And I'm here tonight just to give you a brief overview of the services that we provide to districts that we partner with. So, by way of providing some background, Effective School Solutions started as a private therapeutic day school in New Jersey, the type of placement that students who are struggling in the school setting need to be sent to in order to have their therapeutic needs met. And at the time, the leader of the organization felt that he wanted to try to bring the level of clinical care that students were receiving in that partial placement day school to the school walls. So they partnered with 2 districts in New Jersey in 2009, and we continue to partner with them today. And now we've grown across the country. We're serving over 100 districts across 9 states. And during the last school year, we served almost 5,000 students in our clinical mental health services. When you partner with Effective School Solutions, we bring a highly qualified clinical team to every district that we partner with. And the number of folks on that team is dependent on what the district needs and wants. In this particular case, we're talking about bringing 1 mental health clinician on site to serve your schools, someone who's been trained in mental health and has experience in working with children and adolescents with psychiatric issues. They are also licensed in Pennsylvania and will receive supervision and support from a regional clinical director who functions as another member of the team when we bring a team to the district. Our regional clinical directors are deployed around the country in geographic pods, if you will, and they provide supervision and support to the districts that they are assigned to, and also serve as the person to communicate with the school team in the schools that we're serving. And then finally, we have a remote member of the team who works as a quality and risk management specialist. That person is reviewing the clinical progress of the students being served, looking for red flags, and making sure that the students that we're serving are progressing in their therapeutic program. So it's a team approach to serving students in the districts that we partner with. And then in partnering with us, we do services at the Tier 3 level and at the Tier 2 level. And Shippensburg Area School District has asked us to bring a Tier 2 level program for your consideration. So clinicians that work at the Tier 2 level are working with students with more moderate mental health needs. They are able to serve up to 15 students concurrently, typically serving that student for about 6 to 8 weeks until their therapy goals are met, and then that student can be dismissed and another student can be served. At minimum, students who are receiving the Tier 2 level of support receive weekly individual therapy, and they also receive monthly family sessions. We do regular check-ins with the family and the student throughout the school day, as that mental health clinician is in your school all day, every day, specifically there to serve the students that you've identified need our support. Also, because we have quality and risk management specialists that work in our organization, we're able to provide you with confidential, objective data to show that the students that we are serving are making progress and meeting with the metrics of success for your school. Typically, things like attendance and grades, and also in meeting the goals of the therapy that were developed upon intake into the program. You can see the metrics that are there on the screen are from our last school year, and all of the students that we served, we were able to help districts that we worked with retain 98% of their students in district, meaning they didn't have to be sent to an outplacement to receive the support or the behavior interventions that might have been necessary without partnering with us. We also see a great data around grade point averages for students being served by us, as well as a significant reduction in student absences and in disciplinary incidences. And then one more thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is that in every district partnership that we enter into, we also provide targeted professional development to that district. So we have a professional development team in Effective School Solutions. We have a catalog of over 50 professional development workshops, and we work with the district partners to identify which workshops would be best to meet the needs of your current district's goals and your staff's needs, because we feel very strongly that the staff in the districts we're partnering with need that support in understanding mental health challenges, as well as how to support their students while dealing with those challenges. So that's a brief overview of the work that we do when we enter into a partnership, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Sherry, would this might be a question for you. Is this part of what would be funded with the PCCD grant money?
Yes, so we're looking at using that PCCD mental health part of the grant money. So there's 99% sure it's 152,400 set aside specifically for security measures, which is what Chad was up here talking about, trying to get the alarm systems for the doors. And then there's 152,400 set aside specifically for mental health solutions.
Thank you very much.
When you do the trainings, so part of the tier, I believe it was tier 2, was the training on the positive uses of social media. Is that what she would do?
So
Or
that's more for the tier 2 for PCCD. Actually, Lauren and I talked about that, and we talked about involving our social workers who have a lot of information to that, where they can go into the classrooms and do some lessons for that social media aspect, because we already have it integrated into our curriculum. In 4th grade, they're getting it in library science. They're also getting it in 5th grade library science. They're getting it in their STEAM classroom in grades 7 through 8, and then they're actually getting it up here in 9th grade. So it's integrated in the curriculum, but to have that extra person that's not just their classroom teacher talking about it, we thought maybe the social workers would be a great idea for that. And then also, I was speaking with Mrs. Mowry, who had I believe it was the Attorney General, the district attorney, I don't know if she's here. Was it the district attorney last year that you had come in and do a parent PD session on social media? So for those who can't hear from the mic, the Attorney General does some parent-targeted professional learning on social media, and also can come in and do school-based lessons for students for social media.
I was just wondering, because during the committee meeting, we kind of decided, the DARE program was one of the best programs that we had with an outside agency coming in. I know that the social media aspect is built into curriculum, but we are still having so much trouble with the bullying on social media that I feel like maybe it's not as effective, which is why I wasn't expecting this versus what we had spoke about in the committee meeting.
We had this meeting scheduled for the day after our meeting,
Correct.
so I know we did talk about that in this meeting, that we were
Right.
meeting with them as well.
Our professional development is really for the teachers, so we don't do professional development for students as part of our work. But we do work really hard to help support districts who've identified particular goals they have around mental health and then providing professional development accordingly.
And then also, when we looked at the different professional development opportunities, there are parent professional development opportunities that we looked at and said that this would be very beneficial for our community and our families.
Melanie, Sonia, Lauren, thank you very much. Any other questions for our team? Just one other thing that I'd like to share. If any of you have not gone to community night, which was this past Friday, I do want to thank Tim Hess for putting that program together. And I do want to, on behalf of the board and the district administration, wish all of our fall sports teams and the band a lot of success and good luck this fall season. Mr. Budeball, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Move on to the consent agenda. I'm removing 4A, so that'll be struck from the consent agenda since there's nothing really to vote on there. 4B is your finance reports. 4C are your personnel reports. I'll go through those. 4CA will be taken separately. 4C, professional staff. The administration recommends approval of the following resignation for the purpose of retirement. Elizabeth Minnick, social studies teacher at the high school. Administration recommends approval of the following new appointment. Kimberly Garman, certified nurse at the middle school, prorated salary of $80,458. Administration recommends approval of the following FMLA qualifying leave of absence. Renee Stewart, biology teacher, requesting leave effective September 26th and continuing for 8 weeks. Administration recommends approval of the following transfers for support staff. Lisa Bigler, part-time classroom assistant at James Byrd, to full-time classroom assistant at James Byrd. Ajier Kamis, part-time classroom assistant at James Byrd, to part-time classroom assistant at the intermediate school. Paula Reed, full-time district receptionist at the business office assistant, to full-time transportation secretary. Jessica Roberts, part-time classroom assistant at the intermediate school, to part-time classroom assistant at James Byrd. Amy Yagi, part-time custodian at the high school, to full-time custodian floater for the school district. Administration recommends approval of the following new appointments. Zoe Bender, part-time ABA classroom assistant at James Byrd. Ricky Mayberry, part-time noontime aide at the intermediate school. Jody Swanson, part-time classroom assistant at the high school. Supplemental staff. Administration recommends approval of the following resignations. Mallory Kravitz, high school musical technical production co-manager. And Elizabeth Minnick, graduation coordinator. Administration recommends approval of the following new appointments. Kelly Beer, FFA co-advisor. Lisa Bolts, FFA co-advisor. Melissa Jones, high school equipment manager. Administration recommends approval of the following reappointments for the 2022-2023 school year. Timothy Hess, middle school assistant athletic director / equipment manager. And Brad Horgos, middle school assistant athletic director, co-director, equipment manager. Administration recommends approval of the following volunteer coaches. Ava Franklin, middle school cross country. Connor Tracy, high school football. Administration recommends approval of the following position volunteers. There's a list of them there. 4D is the American Reading Company Professional Development Agreement. 4E is the disposal of band uniforms. 4F is the agreement with Central Penn Education Associates. 4G is the transportation contract revisions. 4H is fuel escalation clause in the transportation contract. 4J is Act 13 evaluation and supervision update. 4J is 2022 health courses for 4th and 5th grade. 4K is the approval for facility dog at the middle school. 4J is the health and safety plan. 4M is 6th grade social studies textbook request. 4N, curriculum maps for social studies and business. 4O is agreement for consulting services. Besides 4C1, does any member want to take any of those items separately? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Fred Scott, make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Scott motions to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Goetz. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 4C1 is the motion to approve William August as superintendent of Shippensburg School District with a start date to be determined, and such approval as superintendent of schools conditional upon a contract being approved with all terms and condition within 90 days of said motion. Is there a motion to approve Bill
Dwayne
August
Burt.
as superintendent?
Dwayne Burt, so moved.
Moved by Mr. Burt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Goetz. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
No.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
No.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7 yes, 2 no.
Thank you, Christie. Bill, would you like to say a word?
I'll be brief and just say my thanks to the board for this amazing opportunity. I'm so excited to join the Greyhound family. Part of what it came through during that process is Shippensburg is filled with dedicated, passionate teachers and administrators, and certainly a proud community. And the kids I met through this process were articulate and just really bursting with pride. And I cannot wait to get here and start to contribute along with the board and lead us forward for many, many years. So thank you again for this opportunity. I'm super excited and have a great opportunity for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Welcome to Shippensburg.
Right on, right on.
Where did I find where it was? Move on to the action agenda. 5A is agreement for Stephanie Metz Speech Services. Is there a motion to approve 5A?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Suiters. Is there a second?
Fred Scott seconds.
Second by Mr. Scott. Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 5B is the addendum to agreement with ESS Northeast. Is there a motion to approve 5B?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mrs. Eberly. Is there a second?
Fred Scott second.
Second by Mr. Scott. Discussion? Roll call?
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 5C is the amendment to the PA ETEP agreement with EduLink. Is there a motion to approve 5C?
Fred Scott, make a motion we approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 5D is the stormwater management operations and maintenance agreement. Is there a motion to approve 5D?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Suiters. Is there a second?
Fred Scott second.
Second by Mr. Scott. Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 5E is the agreement and memorandum of understanding between Franklin County Children Youth Services and the School District for Transportation Services. Is there a motion to approve 5E?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mrs. Eberly. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Suiters. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 5F is G4 Security Solutions Agreement. Is there a motion to approve 5F?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Goetz. Is there a second?
Fred Scott, go ahead.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion?
Yes, I have a question. All right, who are they?
That's an important question, Fred.
Chad, would you like to address that? I know you did some homework on that. I'm also very familiar with G-Force.
I heard the name, but who are they?
They're a company out of Gettysburg. See, like, for the past 9 months, we haven't been in contact with Cermak Security. So as of now, we have no board-approved security business that we can get a hold of. And that includes our athletic events, even the prom. Like, we had to get somebody from the outside from the prom to come in. Is for some reason, and this has been, for months, this has been going on. Dr. Suppo even tried to get a hold of Cermak, and I even sent him text messages like, hey, at least let me know, like, if you guys aren't interested in doing this anymore, so I know I can go out and try to find another company. So anyhow, that's how we got to where we are now. With school coming up, we figured, hey, we really need to get somebody in here. But they're a security group out of Gettysburg that have, that are licensed. And I don't know if she added any attachment on the, I didn't say anything. So I sent some emails and attachments, but I can give you more information if you guys really are looking for that. But they're a licensed group out of Gettysburg that Boiling Springs, I think, has used them. And Gettysburg obviously uses
Chad,
them.
I can add a few things. They are probably in about 45 to 50 different schools. The vast majority of their employees are former state troopers or local police officers that have gone through some training with them. They also they have non-armed and armed personnel, depending upon what your needs are, and the cost is a little bit different. We used them at South Middleton when I was there to supplement some of our own security. But they're well trained. They're good people. Bob Gano is the CEO of that company, who is a former state trooper. I think he was at the captain level in the state police force.
Okay.
And I'm still looking to get been in contact with other groups like Shad Security also, just to have as a backup. But
But for right now, that we chose them because they were the only one we had available.
I'm sorry?
We chose them because they're the only one we had available, correct?
They're the ones that I've talked to and got their certificates and license back in enough time to get on the agenda for a board approval, and just for speed to get somebody, because, right now, again, we don't have any school-approved security for sports coming up.
Okay, thank you.
I understand that, but I still would like the safety committee involved in that. Seems like that's why we have the committees. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but you really caught me off guard when you didn't know who they were.
I thought that they got so many out there, so many different names. I thought it was Gano. I know him. I work with him, but
And $29 an hour, that is probably one of the most expensive groups.
Actually not. By far one of the cheaper groups, by far.
Yeah, by a good bit.
yeah.
Thank you, Chad. Motion's on the floor.
Oh,
Roll call?
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thinking about it. 5G, approval of Boyo Transportation bus and van drivers. Is there a motion to approve 5G?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Bard. Is there a second?
Second.
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 Second by Mrs. Wolf. I don't know I don't know the voice yet.
Really, Mark? Find that hard to believe.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 5H is the approval of the 2022-2023 bus routes. Is there a motion to approve?
Fred Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 5J is the transportation contract between Heck Myers and the school district. Motion to approve 5J.
Move to approve.
I'm sorry, that's 5I. Motion made by Mr. Suiters. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Goetz. Discussion? Roll call?
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. The Chamberlain Pest Control Agreement was placed on the table at the last meeting. Is there a motion to remove it from the table?
I'll motion to remove it.
Motion made by Mrs. Wolfinger. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Suiters. It's a non-discussion motion. Roll call?
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 5K is the Chamberlain Pest Control Agreement. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Suiters. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bard. Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. And 5J is the memorandum agreement between the district and the Area Educational Support Association to add a new pay level for the LPN positions hired in the district. Is there a motion to approve 5J?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Suiters. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Eberly. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Jim Bard,
Yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Yes.
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie Eberly,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger,
Yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. The discussion agenda is now present. These items are on for discussion purposes only, and they'll transfer to the next agenda for action. Before we get to the top three, 6D is the Care Solis and Terrace Metrics Service Agreement. Any further discussion tonight on those? If you have any questions, please get them to the administration so they can get you answers beforehand.
I guess actually, maybe I do have a question. The Cara Solis, when they are getting coordinating the outside services, and Bill had stated that once they kind of identified and I reached out to the parents, you didn't know what happened because, I mean, that's the parents' job. That's the parents'.
And that's what I think is really one of the strengths is really the school helping families to identify issues and then connecting them to resources through Care Solace. So we do a warm handoff to them, and then Care Solace is in contact with the families and navigating that process. So there may be someone in the organization, probably our student service that is probably in communication with them to talk about how many families are using, but nobody else has that information.
So Sherry, would or possibly, I mean, would ESS treat or meet with the students that were identified under the Terrace metric?
So what we are looking at is we currently have some in-school counseling with ELIF counseling and then with Teen Line as well. Those those counselors that we have here accept certain medical insurances that not all of our kids have access to. So what we were looking at is, you know, as that bridge, if you've tried, even with Care Solis acting like bulldogs, and that's what I've heard they sort of are, is they act like bulldogs calling to get services for kids, it's still a wait. I don't know if any of you have tried to get your family members into some mental health help and support, but it's a wait. So if we have students that need some more immediate care, of course, we would be contacting the parents within the 24 hours like the red flags are, but we would like to offer that ESS as a bridge. First, we're looking at our counseling that we have through ALIF and through Teen Line to say, okay, what kind of insurance do the kids have, and is that insurance going to be accepted by our people that we already have? And then when that doesn't happen, then we'd have ESS as a sorry, I don't want to call it ESS because that's a substitute. Effective School Solutions. We would have Effective School Solutions as that backup for students who don't have insurance, because that would be paid for out of that PCCD grant. So they wouldn't have to have insurance to pay for the counseling like our ALIF counseling and Teen Line is.
The resources that they refer, are they local within what's the radius?
So for Care Solis, I will say, and Lauren, maybe you can get up and speak more to that, and then I can learn what I've heard.
Sure. So again, the response or communication plan regarding a referral to ALIF counseling, a referral to our SAP team, a referral to Teen Line, a referral to Care Solis, a referral to Effective School Solution is going to be parent-led. So if a student would flag red, which would identify a significant mental health need, we would be reaching out to that family within 24 hours. That family would be helping direct us in terms of what our next steps are. If family says, yes, on behalf of my student, I would like to pursue some services, we would have a conversation with them, and just general conversation of, okay, how can we support you? What is the need? And then we would basically start to navigate through that path with them. So for example, if the parent identifies, I would like my child to receive some type of therapy immediately, while Care Solis is an option for us, it is very likely, knowing the wait lists in Franklin and Cumberland County, that they are not going to be able to overcome that hurdle. So part of Effective School Solutions, our ALIF counseling contract, all of those contracts is to build in options for parents to say, I would like my child to be seen immediately. Now we're having a conversation where perhaps Care Solis is not the stream that we would like to utilize for that student, but Effective School Solutions and or ALIF counseling is the option. There may be a family that says, thanks for letting me know. I would like you to refer me over to this concierge service, and thanks so much, have a good day. We would then just do exactly a warm handoff to Care Solis, and they would navigate through that system basically through Care Solis, and that would not be something that we would continuously be involved in.
So once that is handed off, where do we step back in? Are we providing any follow-up within the district?
We can, depending on the family and the need. So again, it's all parent and family driven based on the level of involvement that they would like for us to have. So yes, we would likely, someone within the Student Services Department would likely have some reporting in terms of there are 16 students who are actively involved in Care Solis, who are actively on the wait list for example, outpatient therapy. The reason that information is critical is if for example, our school-based outpatient therapists come to us and say, hey, we had a student who moved out, we now have an opening, we could then be contacting Care Solis and saying, hey, we have an opening. Is that something that your member is interested in?
Now, Becky, I think your question was to what's that radius of where Care Solis will call?
Right.
I have heard some people might get in state college. Well, Care Solis says, I have an opening in state college. Does that work for your family? And the family could say, yeah, that works great. Or the family could say, no, that's an hour and a half drive. We need to find something closer.
And it depends on the service that they're referring to. The reality is there are not some services within our local radius, so they may have to refer out. But yes, I've heard examples of families who are willing to seek immediate services, and it's an hour commute or an hour and a half commute.
Stay right there. 6E, Agreement for Consulting Services, what is that for?
Yes, that is a continuation of our consulting services with Dr. David Bateman. We had the same contract in place last year. We used Dr. Bateman for a variety of services, so it's a status quo contract. A couple of things that we utilize him for is professional development regarding compliance for our teachers. Another thing that we often use Dr. Bateman for is when we have families that we are anticipating struggles in terms of communication. Oftentimes we use him as a third-party liaison or mediator between us and a family we want to form relationships with our families. We want our families to feel like they're supported by us, and oftentimes just having that third party come in and serve as a liaison is very helpful. We also have utilized him in cases where a legal litigation is imminent. We have utilized him to review documentations and ultimately prepare us in the event that we anticipate litigation.
Lauren, if I may add, Dr. Bateman is a real special education guru. And if you recall, some time ago, the board asked me to, talk to Lauren and Bethany on our team and to work with somebody such as him to make sure that, our programs and our services are meeting the needs. And Dr. Bateman has been a great resource in that regard. And he's right here in our backyard, which is fantastic and very convenient.
Thank you.
I want to make one comment about the terrace metrics. So I'm not familiar with either of these contractors, but a lot of the focus, it sounds like what we're talking about is sort of finding, kind of the standard paradigm in psychology forever, right, is like, okay, so if there's something wrong with you, then we need to figure out, what that is, and we need to address it, right? And a lot of this conversation sort of revolves around that, sort of flagging people as red or whatever, and then kind of intervening. And that can be helpful. But again, I'm not familiar with these particular companies and their tools, but some of the language that they're using is the language of positive psychology. And what Dr. August was saying is that he, if I understood correctly, is that Big Spring School District gets aggregate data for a lot of these measures.
Maybe I didn't use the right word. We get 30,000-foot view, how many are in these categories. So it's very little detail on specifics of individuals. It's more of a
Right, so you're not necessarily looking at the trees, you're looking at the forest.
Right, absolutely.
Right,
So
my point is just to say, the representatives of those companies didn't, or of Terrace in particular, didn't talk about that, but it sounds like the tool can be used to sort of measure the kind of collective health of a population or a community. And I would suggest, as someone who's maybe biased as a psychologist, that kind of data can be just as useful to track as is aggregate test data for whatever else, right? I mean, because those things that they're talking about, Christy, you mentioned specifically resilience and hope. So I imagine that self-efficacy and optimism are part of that that portfolio of psychometric measures. Like all of that kind of stuff, sort of measuring that on a population data can be super useful if folks are sort of trained and know how to use that and operate with that data on an aggregate level.
And what I would say, as an administrative team at Big Spring, we've looked at that data with different groups to see, changes, coming out of the pandemic. During the pandemic year, very high. We've seen improvements in most groups. So we are looking to track it over time. And as we do different programs within the district to kind of help support staff and students, it's one metric that we can use. I mean, the PACE survey that folks mentioned, is another big one. And for us at Big Spring, there were a lot of red flags in that data, particularly around student mental health and suicide suicidal ideation and things that caused us to kind of take a step back. So just gathering different data points allows us to get a better picture of where our entire student population is.
Yeah, I mean, my point is just to say that like the red flags are important and we should focus on those things. But part of the value, I think, of this data, if it's used in this way, is that you can sort of lift everyone, right? So, I mean, you can look at aggregate test score data and you can say like this is terrible, it needs to be improved, or you can say like this is good, but we can make it better. And part of using these positive psychology metrics is to say, okay, here's our baseline, how can we make it better? And we can engage in sort of district-wide interventions to make that happen.
Absolutely, and it helps to target your different tiers, and allow them to focus a little bit better, and flesh that out around needs. So as you can probably tell, I think it's a valuable tool. Like at Big Spring, we've used it now and are hoping to continue to use it for a long time for a lot of those reasons.
6F is Yellow Breaches Educational Center. Any discussion? 6G is the agreement with News Story for special education services. Any discussion? 6H is News Story IDP agreement for educational services. Any discussion? 6I is a contract for purchase of student services with River Rock. Any discussion? J, Alternative Education for Disruptive Youth Act 48 Program Agreement for Services. Any discussion? K is the after-school tutoring, utilizing the Boys and Girls Club. Any discussion? J is Effective School Solutions. I think we've talked that through. Yeah. 6M is the proposal from Southampton Township to create a connector road. This is on the discussion agenda, so that means it's gonna be on the action agenda at the next meeting.
Well, it doesn't have to be, does it?
No, but I think that we also need to have Attorney Repack take a look to see if there's any conditional issues going on there or any deed restriction issues before we even talk to the Southampton Cumberland Township. I mean, we might as well do the legal check first.
Will do.
So if we don't have those answers by, then, we probably need to boot that off the action agenda.
Will do.
Well, the other thing I would say is that from my perspective, that this came either kind of out of nowhere, it seems, or certainly at least very quickly. And without really any formalized process or identified process that I can see to allow the community stakeholders and so forth to hear any presentations or otherwise to be able to weigh in. I think there's potential safety and security issues around the proposed connector that relates to the school district itself. On one hand, I hear that there's this, one way in, kind of concept, which may or may not be good. In other words, maybe a population would actually, certain events could be trapped in that area. On the complete opposite end of it is the connector might allow for a student to be abducted from the property or whatever and allow someone to get out to 81 faster. So, and I'm sure there are other safety and security related things that need to be discussed. I'm glad you brought up there's only a couple of us that were around when the school district bought the property from the Richies, and there certainly was, to my recollection, some restrictions in the sales agreement and so forth about green space and that kind of thing. And then beyond that, it just seems to me this isn't a 2-week process. Which is kind of like what we have in front of us. Exactly what it is and what perfection would look like, I don't know. But it wouldn't take place over 2 weeks. It would really involve a process where there would be presentations made to a variety of stakeholders. The stakeholders would have a chance to weigh in, and certainly I could not be in a position in any way to support this on the trajectory that we're on here.
Thank you, Mr. Burt. Mrs. Mowry, I know you were actually, are you back there still? Yep. Would you care to make any remarks since you were actually at the table? I don't believe I was available when we were discussing this with them. And let me just also say this. When I was here 12 years ago as an assistant superintendent and meeting with a number of our first responders, Dave Lindemuth also at that time and so on, I do remember a lot of concern about first responders getting there and the issue of the one way in and one way out. I in no way want to push this through expeditiously and so on. I was kind of under the assumption, based on a lot of conversations from a dozen years ago, that this would be something that the board would want to truly consider. But I certainly don't want to rush it through. We want to do everything the right way and the prudent way. Terry, I don't think I was available sitting at the table. You were there. Anything else to add regarding what was said at the table there?
So Scotty Mack from the Southampton Township did contact me regarding this proposal. Mr. Mack indicated that, he wanted to, share this idea with us for safety and security, and, gave us that proposal. I took some notes at that meeting. Chad was there. I was there. Dave Lindemuth was there to listen to him and his proposal. And then I took some notes and I sent, you and you that email. And I believe all the board members received that email as well of notes. And, it's a proposal that was, shared with me. It's something that is just recently, come our way.
Thank you, Terry. And correct me if I'm wrong, absolutely no cost to the district, am I right?
That is correct.
I think Mr. President Boudreaux has a good idea of what to do next with this.
Well, I don't think 2 weeks is going to be enough. I mean, first we got to go through legal review, so I'm going to strike it off the discussion agenda tonight, and I'm going to send this to the Facilities Committee. And the Facilities Committee can report this back out when the project's been vetted enough, because this was kind of a surprise for a lot of us. There's folks living down there that have concerns, and I think that we need to take our time on this issue.
Sounds good.
Who's the chairman of the Facilities Committee?
I think that's me.
Enjoy it, Nathan. Chad, do you have a update on the middle school project tonight, or no?
Yeah, as of now, we got everything that we planned on getting done this summer. It's completed. We got everything cleaned up for the open house. The storefront's completed. The secure wall is down. The ductwork is installed as far as what we can take it. So, it was kind of touchy and got started late, but I think in the end I'd say it was successful. And we're putting out, the bids are going to be putting out soon, and we're still on track for October to break ground for the addition. So other than that, everything got done, everything got cleaned up, and it's ready to go for the school year.
Thanks, Chad. Any other discussion regarding facilities?
I'd like to lump it all together, if that makes sense. So like the remaining two, what is that, facilities / athletic stadium. I typed this out tonight because I don't want to miss anything. So I listened back to a few board meetings over the last couple of weeks. One of those meetings, Mr. Scott said he was tired of not doing anything when it came to facility upgrades. Of course, we are. We just heard the middle school we're going to break ground in October, and that's awesome. I know that that's the tune of many people in the community sing to. So I did some research. Did you know the News Chronicle who does provide great coverage at all of our students, student athletes, teachers, admins, and even school board, has printed 43 articles since 2015 about the Shippensburg Area School District and its current athletic stadium plans here at the school or renovating Memorial Park. 43 articles I haven't printed off in my bag if anybody would like to look at any of them. Almost all of them have quotes from board meetings. Some of those quotes from myself, some of my peers tonight, many people who served on the board in the past. Just a few of those that really hit with me. In 2015, a board member said, I believe the borough facilities need to be modernized. 2015, somebody said there's too many concerns with transportation, scheduling, lakes, et cetera, for the SU partnership. Also in 2015, I think that was when according to that article, was when the Park and Rec Authority was new at the time, and there was some talk about how that could help move the project along. Former board member said the district commissioned a feasibility study nearly 10 years ago about this issue of athletic stadium and other needs. That was in 2015, so that was, I think, back 10 years before that. Another board member said a feasibility study is what we need to do at the time, which I think is what happened. Some of you could probably help me with that. Someone said, I would love to see a new stadium, but we need to make sure we take our time and get it right. There was a survey done then, I believe, sent out by the current board that saw 75% of respondents who said they wanted a new stadium on school grounds. 12% of those who responded said to renovate the park. 12% said they were indifferent. A local resident from the community stated that he thought the concrete grandstands didn't appear safe back in 2015. The stadium did also, in his opinion, didn't have large enough team rooms, bathrooms needed updated, and more seating. Former school board member in 2015 said that study actually happened. The feasibility study was done in 2007 and revealed that it was going to cost $3 million to renovate the park. Again, keep in mind this was 7 years ago that this guy made this statement, and that feasibility study was done 8 years before that. That plan showed it would add 1,000 seats to the stadium down there, new restrooms, concrete grandstand upgrades, renovate team rooms, new lighting and plumbing, but that did not include a turf field. It was estimated in 2014 that the school district spent roughly $33,000 in electricity, the lease, painting, maintenance, and the overtime to maintain Memorial Park. Former Park and Rec representative stated in 2018 that the authority was looking for ways to bring veteran stadiums up to ADA requirements for handicap accessibility. Some of our own employees, a former athletic director, listed some things that were concerns of his. During his time here, he said there's limits on the amount of games we can play, no control over the concessions, the locker rooms don't fit the entire teams, security, how there's only a yellow rope keeping spectators from the field, players, coaches, referees, etc. No storage for equipment, and maybe most importantly, no cover for student athletes from either school if a storm rolls into town. This one, I'm digging a little bit. I found this one in one of those deep articles from 2018. I've never heard any update on it. A gentleman who represented Volvo was at a board meeting and said that no public capital campaign had been launched for raising money, but said Volvo had been working internally to develop infrastructure on how to run a capital campaign. I could go on and on and on with all these different quotes from these 43 articles, but this is going on for a long time, and we all know that. Let me try to just give some of my thoughts as to why these projects that support our athletics, music, and arts all make sense to me. The idea that this simply is a football stadium is pretty bothering. I've laid out many times in the past why I feel a potential multi-purpose stadium is not only for the football team, all extracurriculars can benefit, and quite honestly, the argument should be made that we should be focusing simply on academics is a bit misguided. Now, I certainly think our goal as a school district should be that we should really strive for excellence in the classroom. However, we also have the ability and should be pushing for well-rounded young men and women as they enter the world after graduation. According to NFHS, activities support the academic mission of schools. They are not a diversion, but rather an extension of a good educational program. Students who participate in activity tend to have higher grade point averages, better attendance records, lower dropout rates, and fewer discipline problems than those who do not partake in extracurricular activities. Activity programs provide valuable life lessons and skills for practical situations like teamwork, fair play, and hard work. Through participation, students learn self-discipline, build self-confidence, and develop skills to handle competitive situations. These are the qualities that students need if they are to become responsible adults, productive citizens, and skilled professionals. Furthermore, the National Longitudinal Study of Adolescent Health Study showed that extracurricular activities provide settings within schools that are uniquely poised to promote friendships, provide safe settings, and allow adolescents space to interact and engage with their friends. In the era that we are living in, and we've talked about it a bunch tonight, with the uptick in kids and our general population for that matter, who are struggling with so many issues, aren't some of the benefits that I just listed above something that we should really look to invest in? Now, I'm almost done, and I apologize for taking a bit longer than normal in my rant tonight. But this is something that I'm really passionate about, and so many people, when I get out into the community, seem to be too. We just went through a process of hiring a new superintendent. In that process, I noticed many of those so highly qualified people that I got to be a part of meeting and that interview process, so many of them offered background either in interview or in resumes that showed that they were involved in a high degree with extracurricular activities, whether that's sports, band, whatever the case may be. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we didn't think that the background for all of those people that we just sat through and met, it definitely helped them become the professional educators that they are today, and I truly mean that. One final thing on that is I sat in the admin building last week, one of those days we were there for I think 8 hours or whatever it was. I looked around the room and I saw something that stood out to me, and I jotted it down in the middle of one of our breaks, and it said, there's a picture on the wall that says Shippensburg Greyhounds, pursuing excellence, building characters, and developing relationships. I will tell you this, there are a whole lot of relationships that are built on a playing field or in a practice field with your teammates. I don't care if it's 11 players in a huddle or 90 students practicing for a marching band parade that's coming up soon. That picture sits in our admin conference room, and I really think we should live up to that in every way we can. Now, I say all that to say this. We can sit here and talk and go back and forth tonight and however we feel about it. We've done that many times before, and I'm sure we'll do it again. But I really think that this is a huge opportunity, and we've talked about it. I think we all know that. This is a huge opportunity, and I said athletic stadiums. When I said at the beginning, can I lump this in? This obviously includes our building needs as well, adding on to different areas of the building and all of that. I really think that we have got to, again, be quick, but don't hurry, don't rush things. But we really need to consider getting together, sitting down, and devoting time to getting it right on this, because as far as I think I'm aware, I think we are eligible to take out more bond money in January. That timeline's coming, that we're able to do that. And of course, interest rates and everything else have not been our friend, or anybody at this point. So that is what I would say about that. I'm sorry I ran it a bit. I just felt like the conversations I've had with so many people in the community that I can't go to a grocery store without getting out of there about it. So I just felt like I needed to say that. I tried to put my words together to make so I didn't rant all that much. So.
Levi, I don't disagree with you. Last meeting we were here, SiteLogic had a plan. And we did ask them for a few tweaks. My assumption was they were going to be at this meeting to present that, and they're not here.
Right.
So I'm hoping that they'll be back at the next meeting, because it sounds like we're getting down, they've got us to that plan.
Right.
But we needed those tweaks done. I'm kind of disappointed they're not here, because I was hoping that, whatever tweaks we asked them for, and I don't even remember all of it right now because of all the other issues we talked about tonight, but, I would really like to have SiteLogic here at the next board meeting, because I think you had some tweaks to the gym.
Of course, that's the thing is, I have some things that I say, Mr. Bird has things that he says, you'll have things that you'll say. We'll all go around the
Right.
table. None of us.
You can't be doing this for 3 more years.
Yeah, and that's really where I'm at. And the reason I said about sitting down separately is I don't want to take away, because obviously, we've been here for 2 hours tonight, and I'll sit as long as we possibly need to get problems right and resolved. But there's a lot of other things. I think this is the kind of thing that kind of is its own entity, if that makes sense, because of the size and the scope of what we're looking at.
It is, and we moved forward with the middle school project. And now it's time to, up the next level, and that includes wherever, the multi-purpose stadium, and it includes the high school. So I think SiteLogic needs to be back here at the next meeting to discuss the changes that we talked to them about when they made their presentation. Because this stuff does have to keep moving, and I don't want to be sitting here next April still talking about what we're going to do at the high school.
Well, I'd like to echo Mark's comments. I thought that we were getting much closer to a place, right? I mean, I assume they weren't here 2 weeks ago in the meeting I missed.
They were.
Oh, they were here 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago? Oh, okay. So there was a plan. Well, all right. Well, then I can't speak to that because I wasn't paying attention to that meeting. I was thankfully out of radio contact. But I'll just shut up and never mind. Somebody else go.
Let me say this. I listen to every word, and I appreciate the approach. But I'd like to observe that a lot of what you said related to talking about the need to address. And I don't think that to a person that there's any question about the need to address our facilities, to include our athletic facilities. That isn't the problem. The problem is about how to address all the needs. Maybe the problem's a little deeper in that, which is making sure that we have visibility of all the needs. And in terms of time frame, I would remind you, and I have some idea about how this came to be, but only just a few weeks ago was there a request to go back with all of us, including building administration and the architects and engineers and the board and so forth, to look at our middle school and high school facilities, from which there were many more things identified that need to be done that are now under consideration for doing than if that hadn't been done. You understand where I'm going here? Absolutely. I believe that there's still additional needs that are coming forward. We sat in the administrative offices, and we identified, some things there that needed to be considered, and we sent them back with that homework as well. There's the concern about how we're going to address the landlocked situation at our high school, and I just want to remind you, and there's been some talk about the need for additional land, but we're land poor here on the high school property, and the discussions were with the engineers that if we build a multipurpose stadium here, then what will the picture look like in 25 to 27 years if at that point in time we needed to add on to the high school? And the answer to that is we will then be tearing down perfectly good high school building and building up multi-story, because we're out of land here. We're landlocked. Actually, the first thing they said is, well, if these weren't athletic fields, but they are under that proposal. So I think land is a consideration. This really, in my mind, is about understanding a comprehensive plan of all the needs, and then developing the plan on how those needs are going to be addressed. We must do both of those things. I don't think there's an argument here at this table about that. Now, some have differing ideas about the ways in which they can, but in my mind, I would put together a comprehensive list of the way the needs can be addressed, and I would explore all those ways in which the needs can be met, and then work through a decision matrix to determine the best way with the whole picture in mind. And that's really the complicated part. It's not it really isn't the history of how we got to here.
For me, I keep hearing landlocked. I look at the school, the whole west side of the building where the stadium would be is the track, right? What classes do we have on that side of the building that we would expand that side of the building? Now, if you told me the soccer field, couldn't argue. If you told me the baseball field, couldn't argue. But how is the stadium on that side of the field where all our classes on this side, and we have to go back, affects that? We can always move soccer back to the park if we had to. That doesn't take any much money. We can move baseball to Cumberland Valley. Southampton Cumberland, they have a nice field, but they could build us a field like Green Village. So I don't see the landlocked issue, because the stadium would be on the west side of the building, and the back side is nothing but soccer and baseball that can be moved if we need to. So the landlocked part doesn't set with me rather well, because I keep hearing it. The part of the thing, they just gave us a presentation. I don't know how much. Chad, do you have any idea? Every time we ask for a change or a Chad, don't we pay for that? We figure out over $100,000 invested in charts and changes?
I don't want to answer that, but I don't answer that with 100% confidence, but you're right, I mean, we're probably at least 50, it could be at least 50.
Okay, the gentleman implied that I talked to was a lot more than that. Yes.
But that was even the changes at the middle school we made too. I mean, you gotta make changes,
I understand. I had no problem with the changes.
The landlocked part, another thing is how much green space we need when we build a building.
Yeah.
So that's a part in there. It's a big part in there. It's gotta be 50%.
Well, let me offer this, and if you ride back here and if you look, land doesn't really appear to be plentiful. I think that's there's no land adjacent to us, with one exception, and that's where the landlocked comment comes in. I believe that you're aware that there was some inquiry about adjacent land, and even some discussion about the pricing of that land. Now, I don't know why you would be doing that if you didn't realize you were landlocked, or if you didn't realize that land is tight here on this property, or if you didn't consider that you might need some. Why would you be exploring the possibility of that? Why would you be entertaining, getting quotes on that, or what that could possibly, be purchased for if you didn't need land? And the answer is you wouldn't.
That's your opinion of the situation. Mine is that it doesn't hurt to have land at any time.
It is absolutely my opinion of that. And the other thing is that there are multiple ways in which these needs can be addressed. And I want to see us look at all those needs. And if we determine that the overall best plan, giving all the considerations, is to do this, then I'll vote for it. But until we've looked at all the options, we're just not there yet.
They gave a presentation where we have $750,000 left over. I don't know how much more you're going to do than that. They don't whittle it down. We give up the high school gymnasium to proceed that. You said you wanted a plan. They came up with it. $750,000 is left over, and that's $8 million for the stadium. What more can we do? And one more point. We've been told, am I right, Christy, that we lost $5.4 million because of interest rate inflation, correct?
Yes.
And the gentleman from SiteLogic keeps coming up here and telling us every time we delay, we lose money. So we're almost about $6 million. That's what's the price of the cafeteria. And so we're going to push off more months, and so more money, we're taking away from the kids. We're not adding to it. At the point, we got to make a decision. And I don't see where the stadium is that detriment to the school system that we can't progress with it and to the future.
Well, SiteLogic was just here, and they had a presentation. They had the projects outlined, and they said what we could afford and what they were going to do. I think we're kind of at the end of that process. And I think that, I think we need to have SiteLogic here at the next meeting and ask a few more questions, and then let's move on.
Let me ask you this: Are you happy with the renovated gym concept? Because you apparently can't have the new gym. The new gym didn't fit in there. Still more discussion.
Yeah, well, I look at that whole project and say that some of us have talked about putting a cap on an athletic stadium, not $8 million, and dropping that down. That's why the last thing I said here was I don't want to say I'm begging, but I'm pleading that we can sit down together as a group. Maybe that doesn't have to be, and I'm not saying that we can't sit here on a normal, regularly scheduled board meeting, but I'm saying that there seems to be a whole lot of stuff involving everything, whether it's an athletic stadium, a gym, the classroom additions to the high school, the music and arts addition back here that we looked at, all of it, that I really think that we need to sit down and figure it out and see if we can't get on the same page, because I don't know that all of us are so far apart. It may seem like it, but at the end of the day, You know, we will all come together and compromise in some way as long as we can sit and talk and get an agreement that what we agree for as a board is best for our students and investing into our students.
I thought we've been doing that, and I thought Site Logic put that plan together based upon what we've all discussed over the last 2 years.
Right. Well, my question is, what have we done that said, we sat down and said like, hey, this is our, as a group, we're gonna spend to figure out our first priority, because they've given us phases, but we don't agree with everything that are in the phases. There are things that some of us think that that should be absolutely done, some of us say, no, maybe not. And I'm just saying, like, it's really like a work session that we just sit and talk and communicate things out. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that seems to be a good idea. And
That's what we did. That's how the middle school got started.
Absolutely, Charlie, and I'm asking now that we look at that and we move past the middle school and look at the high school, look at, there were some things at elementary schools, not much, but that plan that just got passed around. The admin building you just brought up, you know, there were some things that we discovered there. I'm saying that I feel like we need to dedicate a night, a set amount of hours on this project specifically. I started saying this back in the very beginning when Dr. Goetz, myself, and Mr. Hilbinger on the facilities committee. And I felt like it was a big, big project for 3 people in a committee. And I understand the committees and all that, but this is huge. It's just my opinion.
For me, the process should have been, when we got the feasibility study, we should have went down as a board and picked out what we could do and what we couldn't do. Ever since feasibility started, we've been telling the Site Logic, well, do this for us, do this for that, do this. They are the ones making the decisions, what we want. And every time they come up with one, well, no, I want this change. No, I want this change. We need a contract for this. That's what, in my estimation, we should have done. But we're past that now.
But I think a lot of the change came when, again, they did the feasibility study. They're telling us what we need, but then we actually did a walkthrough through the building and didn't agree with what they said needed done. So I think that may have set us back a little bit further with our planning, especially with the family consumer science and some other areas.
All the arts and so forth at both the high school that are now being addressed that were going to be missed, and all the arts and the music and so forth, both here and at the middle school that were going to be missed. The problem is you guys are pointing to, and I appreciate, but you're pointing to a time frame that, well, if we could have done this and if we had, all this stuff would have been missed.
I think you present a great point, because when we did a walkthrough, we found a lot of issues, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and you know, and you know how that happened.
Right, we got together, we looked through as a group, and we figured out problems. And I'm saying now, let's come back together as a group, focused on just that in one specific time. You just said it, that it worked.
I would agree with that. I really think, I mean, it's past time. We all need to, maybe it's a dedicated special meeting to just the facilities and the athletic stadium, but we can't keep like only talking about it for 30 minutes every 2 weeks. We're never gonna make progress.
So I mean, I don't disagree with all that, but I'm hearing a lot of pessimism. I'm feeling optimistic. I feel like we've come a long way and we're getting closer. I mean, as I'm looking through this plan, this seems like, I mean, I'm just reading the outline, but it looks a lot closer to something that I can get behind and that we can actually afford. I mean, because again, you know, way back when we were looking at these massive new gym and a new stadium, and it was clear we couldn't do both of those things. And it was like, you know, the plan that's on the table just isn't feasible. And now I think we're getting closer to a place that is feasible. So I actually feel like we've come a long way, and I am pretty optimistic about where we're going. So I'm certainly not opposed to a special meeting. I mean, that's fine, you know, whatever, but let's do that. But I feel like we're making movement.
I agree with you to that end. Since I've joined this board almost 9 months ago, whatever it is, I feel like there has been progress made and good conversations. Now I say we see the finish line. Let's push ourselves there.
Okay. I mean,
Get to a
kind of where
vote.
I'm at.
Let's get to a vote.
Amen.
I agree, and that's why I thought Site Logic would be here and would fine tune that
Well, let me just,
project a little bit, because that project outline that they had has been the months and months of dialogue. We're there. We're asking for a few tweaks and we're asking for a few changes here and there, but we're there. And, you know, to continue to push Site Logic off for 2 more weeks and 4 more weeks, we're not doing taxpayers justice, we're not doing our students justice, and we're not doing anybody justice by doing that.
Well, let me just say this too. And I said this before, but I want to point it out again. Had the decision been made on this a few months ago, we'd have got it pretty wrong. Okay? And I'm glad that, and for those of you that walked and looked and you might ask yourself, what precipitated that meeting? How did that come to be? When prior to that we'd have got it wrong. Ask yourself that question. The other thing I would say is that I'd feel much better supporting the addressing of the needs if I'm confident that we have looked comprehensively at all the needs and that we've put together the best plan we can to include, not that we would or should, but to include looking at all the options in the ways the needs can be addressed. For example, if land is important and we got a value on some adjacent land, is there a way to work with the borough in concert with? Now listen, I'm not talking about looking at the way it's been in the past. We've got to divorce ourselves from the way it's been in the past and ask ourselves, is there a possible new deal to be made with the borough? If land, for example, is worth this much, and you could have availability of 6 or 8 acres that's a huge amount of value. Could you get that on a long-term lease for $1 a year for 99 years? And then divorce ourselves from the thinking that it's theirs to upkeep or it's theirs to where it would be ours. If those discussions need to take place because the land is adjacent to us, there's already parking there. We have parking problems here. You remember one of the earlier iterations was to add 330 parking spaces here. And so if for $99 we could get 6 or 8 acres, that would be ours. It's funny, right? But it's not funny. It should definitely be considered. And if you don't do that, you're not going to get my support on the project. Now you may not need my support on the project. The other thing is that should be looked at and considered is the university came and they talked to us about a new deal in terms of working in partnership. If in partnership with them, we could get lights put up at Seth Grove Stadium, and that could become our home field. We could take that $8 million and keep it in our pocket, use it for something else, and pay as we go on a lease to the university. Now, I'm not saying that that's what right looks like, or that's what right looks like. What I'm saying is that what right looks like is that you consider all the options for the ways the needs can be met and then work down through a decision-making process to ultimately decide what we do. Then I think we got it right. Until then, I believe you'll be lacking my support.
For me, the borough, I lived in the borough, I've been living in the borough 20 years, and I've been here many years. In the last 5 years, name one thing they have improved down there. One thing they put money into. I'm a borough taxpayer, a borough resident. What down there had my money gone to improve that park?
But let me say this, that's missing the whole point that I just tried to make, because they don't have the money. What I'm talking about is, can we lease the land such that the control of the property is ours? Then we could see fit to put the money into it and to do the upkeep on it. It would be the same as acquiring any other 6 or 8 acres of land that I know and you know what the value is that would be adjacent to our properties. But have complete control. I'm really not talking about what the borough has done or not been able to do because they didn't have the money. I don't think is the point. The point is, can we talk with them? Will we talk with them? Will we negotiate what the deal could look like? And that work hasn't been done yet.
Dr. Torrey and I met with the borough over 2 years ago to try to resolve these issues. We presented 3 questions to them, and never got back to us. And when we talk about control of the stadium, they made no commitments and said they wouldn't. As far as I'm concerned, the borough, you know, we've been trying to do that since I got back on this board 2 years ago. And 2 years later, we're still asking the same questions we asked them 2 years ago.
When was the last time anybody from this board was appointed to meet with the borough? And I'm not really interested in talking about 2 years ago.
Well,
When was the last time that a committee of this board?
meet with them two
or the
more
board-
years later.
Or the board, or, the answer is we haven't. We haven't done the work.
Well, wait a minute. Myself and Jim, we talked to the mayor and head of council down there, down the park, discussing it. And with the ownership and control came up, and it was not resolved.
It's never gonna be resolved.
That came, that been closer, am I
Well,
wrong,
the
Jim?
ownership would be theirs. They would have the deed. But the long-term lease and the language of how that negotiation could look, the control of the property, it would be a negotiation. Work hasn't been done, ladies and gentlemen. The work hasn't been done. And oh, by the way, if you live in the borough, you'll be paying for two. You'll be paying for that one and this one, if you live in the borough.
You're willing to take the school district money and put something on somebody else's property.
On a 99-year lease with all the work done and with
Leases
all the.
get broke all the time.
With all the legal language? Yeah.
I guess one question is, again, like I did my research on this, a feasibility study from 2007 showed Memorial Park needed $3 million in renovations. What's that look like 15 years later? I think that's a question. And we saw initial plans from SiteLogic, I don't know, I got them somewhere, where they showed Memorial Park and what could be done, and that was more. Now, I know there was definitely issues in that, sir, I understand that. There were things that I looked at and I was like, why would that need to happen? 100%. I agree, there's like double bathrooms and all that different things. But the cost was the exact same. Down there, last year, we almost didn't get to play a district playoff football game because there's questions about lighting the week of the game. I think that's a real concern. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's a huge thing to me. And the thing I don't lose sight of, in all of this is, again, it's not a football stadium. Every student takes a gym class, grades 6th grade through 12th grade, can benefit, specifically grade 9 through 12. It's a requirement to graduate. If you talk to our PE teachers, you talk to our high school admins, they guarantee you we'll use that facility. Our band will use that facility. We could use it. I heard the idea, all of us did last week, about building a stage on one end of that, and they use that for community concerts. Those are awesome things. What's that happen? Does that happen at the park now? Because I've never been to a concert down there, at least not anytime recently. I think we have an opportunity. We always talk about the community. We are a giant part of the community, and I think that I want to be a part of helping provide for the entire community in this project.
Why don't we have SiteLogic here at the next board meeting and try and keep the agenda light so we have time, all right?
We'll do.
All right, any other comments?
So let me be clear, we're not going to take any action to put a board committee together to meet with the borough or to meet with the university to explore those possibilities? Well, shame on us. Shame on us.
All right, we'll move on to citizen comments. This section of citizen comments is for any other item that, you may want to address.
I'm sorry, Mark, 6N portable.
Yeah, and
Oh, I didn't even see that down there.
6N.
It's on there, we're gonna
Where's
probably
it?
get to action item next time.
Yeah,
That's all we need.
it's not on mine. It wasn't on mine.
You're right.
Oh. Under discussion is 6N portable toilets. Any questions regarding toilets today?
Yeah, we had a discussion about the Porta Johns and the school district, and what is the procedure, Dr. Moore? What is the procedure for businesses that want to participate in the Porta Johns?
Gotcha. To the best of my knowledge, past practice has been the athletic director works with a provider, gets us a good price. Hopefully, we get good services. A little history, if you recall, from I think my first month here a couple months ago, Mrs. Sarah Fanis wasn't real happy with some of the services that we were getting with the current provider. She showed me documentation of communication and so on with that provider. And once she wasn't satisfied, she went out of the area and found another provider. And that's what we're dealing with today. We also found out, again, from our solicitor, basically any contract that's over $100, if it's a contract and it's $100 or more, does need to come for board approval. I have given direction to our administrative team for future reference that we all make sure that that has happened. Sometimes the way groups get around on that is a handshake, or they don't require an agreement or a contract and so on. So, that puts a little gray area in there. It hasn't, I'll be full disclosure, the Porties have not been a high priority list for me recently. We're, getting ready for the school year to start and so on. But one of our board members asked that we would put it on the discussion agenda tonight, so we did that as a courtesy to him.
We're talking about a local business that was disenfranchised because of this. And I don't know reason, I didn't get to see the reasoning. And I know past practices, we've had things going on within this district that just done, and we know the board don't even know it's done. I'm not blaming her or anything else, but if I got a man I've been doing business in the school district, and I got to look him in the face. I like to know why I did what I did, and I don't know.
And Chief Scott, I would also say another point of reference that I've made with our leadership team, also for future reference, whenever humanly possible, we are going with commercial properties that are paying taxes in the Shippensburg School District. We want to do that. Yes. They get priority. However, the caveat I would say, if they are not providing the services, if they are not performing at a certain level, a minimum level that we need to provide, then I want to hear about it, and we want to work with them, and we will go with alternatives at that time. But I do want to make sure that we are communicating with that commercial property, that provider, and give them every opportunity to make it right.
Well, that's my problem. There's a conflict between what's being said here and what's being said here, and I'm in the middle. I'd like to, if he is not providing the service we want, I'd like to see that documentation, so I can make a fair assessment.
Since it was on discussion, next time it can be on the voting, and we can vote, and
That's 2 weeks from now.
yes.
And that's 2 weeks that somebody's gonna have Porter Johns at our facilities, and people gonna see that it's not a local company. I don't know what happened or whatever, but for me, I have an issue with that. I'd like to see, until we get this resolved, come in there, I think our people should deserve to be seen.
So I guess, what are we discussing? The other ones were removed, another one was brought in. What are we discussing? Bringing back a local, what is the discussion?
I think it needs to be a contracted service.
Yeah.
Of the price of it. It's going against policy, because they should have been a contracted service.
Right.
Because we don't know what was he required to do and what wasn't he required to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be on the next agenda.
And I just need a little direction as to what you would like to do. I could certainly have Mrs. Fanis, as she has done in the past, give an explanation as to the rationale as to why she's done what she's done. I can have her revisit that and provide that for you all.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
You can have her flush out the details.
Oh, Becky. It's too late for that, Becky.
But I would still like it on the next agenda for making it a contracted service,
Okay.
like it should be.
Now we'll move on to citizen comments.
Oh, my.
Chastity Johnson?
Chastity Johnson, 36 South Penn Street. I'm here again to express my concern to the board about some of the bullying and hazing that we continue to see amongst our athletic teams and the increase in severity that we are seeing. It has been less than 8 months since the issue we had on the basketball team. Now we have a new issue on the soccer team. And it has been brought to my attention that some of these behaviors that happened in this new incident are very similar to what happened or that the individual within the basketball team had bragged about doing to some individuals. It is also very concerning that some of these offenders were also members of that basketball team in the winter. I am concerned that since we did not send a loud and clear message last winter, that we opened up the door to say that this behavior is okay to continue. And now we have new victims. We have students who have left the soccer team, who have decided not to come out for the soccer team, students who have decided not to come out for other teams because this behavior goes on. My son is one of them. He participated in other sports in the middle school and in 9th grade. He decided not to continue in Greyhound athletics because of this kind of behavior. His best friend left sports last year because of this stuff. And now we know another individual who had unspeakable things done. I would like to know what it's going to take for this district to send a message. This is not what we represent. Does somebody have to get hurt? Do we have to be investigated by the Attorney General or the District Attorney's Office like Middletown? And if this board is not familiar with that case, I suggest you turn on the news, because our behaviors are starting to ratchet up and we're getting pretty close to that. I think the time has come, and you guys have the power to send the message that this stops now. This is the last group of victims. Send the message to the athletes, the parents, and the coaches that enough is enough. This is not Greyhound athletics. This is not what Shippensburg School District represents. Send the message to the victims that you stand with them and there will not be another one after them. Anybody that participated in this behavior should not see a second of playing time. Please put an end to this. You were elected to protect our children. Please do that.
Chastity, I would like to respond to that, but this is now moving into the hearing level before the board, a legal matter, so we're not permitted to talk about it.
understand.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Chad Lehman?
Chad Lehman, 99 Lesher Road. I'm here tonight to speak about the soccer team. I wanted to speak and ask questions about the punishment for the 3 players involved and the team. My first question would be for the board and administration as to why 2 of them are allowed to come back. I've asked this question in email conversations and was told it's confidential. If it's confidential, then why is it okay for the students involved to send messages to their friends and tell them what's happening? Does that break a confidentiality agreement? And parents of the team would like to know what the school is presenting for a punishment. We have the right to know about the safety of our children. And the reason I say I know they're coming back is their jerseys were kept for them, which is almost like a reward. Because there's kids that can't wait to get certain numbers. And there's kids that wanted those numbers and were told they had to wait, that they were not available. My second question is why punish the team by restricting them from any camp for the next 4 years? The team's not to blame for a couple students' actions. The administration is punishing them kids, or punishing kids that aren't even playing at the middle school level yet because it's for 4 years. So why such a harsh punishment for the victim? What message does that send to them? I asked for the board and administration to think deeply about my questions. It just doesn't seem like a just and fair punishment to allow these boys back on the team this season. It feels as if they're getting a reward, and they're missing out on the 2-a-day practices and all the hard work that these boys have put forth. The team's up early every morning running and practicing while these kids sit at home with their feet propped up. The team has continued to bond and play as one. Let them continue on with that. The administration should have zero tolerance for bullying. The Code 249 of the board policy lists the consequences for bullying. Number 1 was counsel with the school, 2, parental conference, 3 loss of privileges, 4 exclusion from school-sponsored activities, 5 detention, 6 suspension, 7 expulsion, 8 counseling/therapy, 9 referral to law enforcement. Number 1 and 2 were followed, but what happened to 3 through 9? How do they not apply? I've asked many questions tonight, but they are ones I have and other parents have had. I just asked you and the administration think about these points and give the victims justice, not the bullies. This is a big problem within the district, and if harsh punishments are not given directly to the bullies and only to the bullies, it will continue to get worse and become more frequent. I just hope this can be resolved in a timely but quick manner so these boys can get on with their season and just play soccer instead of having rumors continue to spread and hang over their team. My son added that he would like to see an anonymous survey go out to all the players and ask them if they feel these kids should come back to the team, and do they feel safe for those kids to come back to the team? Because they're the ones that it affects the most, and it doesn't seem like they're getting their true say in the matter. Thank you.
Chad, thank you for your comments and your questions. There has been a formal hearing requested. The board has to act as a judicial body, so we're not permitted to respond.
But we don't have a timeline? Like,
Is there a hearing?
I mean, season starts next week.
We have heard from our solicitor, August 30th is a date that he has open. There's a whole process with setting that up, though, and so on. So again, I can't get into that right now. But I'm chopping at the bit to want to say more, but I will just say this. I do have a lot of faith in our principal and our administrative team at the high school trying to do the right thing. The easy thing would be cancel the season, kick a number of kids off. That would have been the easy way to do it. They chose the hard route. They chose to investigate. They chose to talk to a lot of the kids, firsthand information, factual information, not social media, rumor, and hearsay. My feeling is I've got a good team at the high school that want to do the right thing for all parties involved. We fully recognize it's a no-win situation. It's really unfortunate, and we're extremely disappointed in the behavior of several of the kids at the Bucknell camp. I don't know what else to say except that we're going to do our due diligence. We're going to make sure we protect the victims and make sure that they're comfortable with the final result. It won't be 100% satisfaction for everybody. We fully recognize that, and it's just a really unfortunate situation. I hate that our high school administrative team is put into it. I hate that our soccer team is experiencing this, and we want to do our best to make sure that we're proactive and it doesn't happen again, especially after a situation last year. It hurts deeply that we're dealing with this, but they took the hard route, and they're trying to do what's best for as many people involved as possible, long term. And I do appreciate you coming tonight, and I appreciate your passion for the soccer team and so on. And I'm a big believer in the value, as Levi has said on occasion, of the value of sports and what that can teach long term. I'm also, as I get older, maybe I'm getting softer. I'm a believer in second chances and that people do make mistakes, but hopefully they can recover from those. And discipline should be a learning process, not just punishment and consequences. That's about all I'm comfortable saying right now. There's a whole lot more that Mrs. Luffy and her team knows, but believe me, we're going to do our absolute best to protect everybody if we can.
And I'll caution board members not to address any comments, since you will be a judiciary body in this.
Well, on the second chances, these kids have had many chances on the field. If you check the card reports in the PIAA, you'll find that the 2 involved have probably had more yellow cards than the rest of the team combined for the bullying and their mouths on the field. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Also with
Thank
the
you.
second chances, so.
Thanks, Chad.
All right, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Does anybody else have a public comment?
Hey, everybody, I'm Josh Maury. I live on Brent Street. I don't want to belabor the point too much about that road that we were talking about earlier. That's not a big, nobody's a big fan of it, it seems like, but that 50-foot section of road, or I think it's 80-foot section of road that the school district would have to approve, the amount of traffic coming through there. There's 2 or 3 more warehouses getting built at the other end of the other end of town. Not to mention there's a Wawa's coming across from H&H. There's a truck stop that Rudders is putting in, also up at the other end of 81. We all know about the casino. I don't think that amount of traffic is what you want coming past James Byrd or the intermediate school. I don't think that Holler Extension, which is the name of the road that goes down to the intermediate school, it was built, designed, or can handle that kind of traffic. Neither can Holler Avenue. Not to mention, there's about 150 homes in that neighborhood that'll be severely affected by that much traffic coming from a casino, a truck stop. There's subsidized housing proposal right behind Rudders that's going to be built as well. There's a pile of stuff going on at that end of town very soon. And I don't think a road going from Airport Road through Holler Heights back to Orange Street, which is already strangled and a real mess, is a real good idea. It might be cheap. You know, 300 feet of road's pretty cheap. Put a little paint on the road, whatever, you got yourself a road. But for that much traffic funneling right into Orange Street, which is already a mess, King Street already can't get itself together as far as traffic signals, timing, things like that. It's going to be a terrible idea, big mess. There needs to be some serious traffic studies done. Needs to be some engineers hired to study. You know, however Gettysburg, Carlisle, and Chambersburg did it, we kind of need to look at that because they have a lot more traffic, and you know, I can get from my house to Carlisle quicker than I can get from my house to the Treat or Crown Restaurant, just because it's a mess. The lights are bad, roads are bad. It's a mess. Lastly, I was, you know, about that stadium. I'm coming in behind 8 ball, and I kind of don't care. But if we spend $8 million on a new one, and Memorial Park costs $3 million, I'm going to pay 11. It's going to be more like 14. I do government contracts for the federal government now. 11 turns into 14 pretty quick. As a taxpayer, I'm going to pay for both. So why wouldn't I put my money into Memorial Park, which is already there, and wouldn't affect the school district's green space or future building plans or anything else? You know, Veterans Stadium, it's been there a long time. It used to be really nice. It could be again. Instead of spending 8 or 3, why don't we spend 4.5? Make it really nice. Do some deal with the borough. And that becomes all ours. We can use it. And then use 5 or 6 for upgrades to the school. That's just my thought, just, you know, whatever. I know you guys have been through this time and time again. That's just a thought. Because I'm going to pay for both of them. Somebody's going to fix up Veterans Stadium someday. It's probably going to be the borough, where my taxes go. And if I pay for a school district to have a nice stadium, I'm going to pay for that too. So I'd rather just pay for one that's already here. Could be really nice. All right, that's it. Thanks to you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We'll move on to board comments. I want to thank the administration, the teachers, and the staff for really a tremendous effort you all put in to get us ready for Thursday. Job well done. It was also a pleasure to attend orientation, and I want to welcome all the new employees to the school district for their first year here with us. And job well done, Nicole, for the incredible hiring effort. We've seen school districts around the state struggle, and you got us filled up, so appreciate that. Kudos to Sherry for well laid out plans that kind of were tanked by a transformer this morning, but hey, good job. And finally, welcome, Bill. We're excited to have you, and take a ride with you, all right? Any other board comments?
I swear I'll be quick. I just want to say, make sure that I express thanks to Dr. Fry, who helped us as our consultant through this process. Many of my peers on the board have been through this before. I felt extremely spoiled. Anytime I had a question about anything, he was one phone call away. And I think that we had a really good process for that, and I really appreciate it. Also, thanks to all the people and the students, faculty, community that committed in those focus groups. Also, Dr. Moyer was a part of that. Just wanted to say thanks. In general, looking forward to working with Mr. August. One thing that stood out to me, and I'm going to go back to 2 weeks ago, I think, Sherry, when we talked about the comprehensive plan. And of course, I read through that. You made that thing like 90 pages, but I read through it.
I didn't make it 90 pages. That's PDE's format. I tried to get it down to like 5.
But one of the things that was listed as a challenge is said this, and I took notes of it then, and I carried it over and saved it till tonight. It's a continuous turnover in leadership has made it difficult to truly communicate our shared vision and mission to establish and maintain a focused system for continuous improvement and organizational coherence. Also, then it goes on to say that continuous turnover in leadership has created a void in the communication of the system to allocate resources and supports to our schools based on an analysis of a variety of data. I say that because I think that we have picked a gentleman who has a long-term vision here. I think that we've done a great job as a board in doing that. And honestly, coming in tonight into campus, you saw cars everywhere. Back to school orientations, it's awesome. I think the timing's perfect. I welcome everybody back, knowing that we now have our new leader established, and voted on and approved. And I hope everybody gets on board, because I think we're going to great places as a district. So, thank you.
Any other comments?
I do, just real quick. So this Friday, Cedar Cliff, first away game for the season. Anybody coming? I know I'll be there because I'm that band mom. But speaking of the band and talking about the athletic stadium, I think we put so much focus and emphasis on the fact that it only supports our sports end of it. But being a band mom, I've seen the need, especially in the last 3 to 4 weeks, with preparing for band camp and all of those things, right, Chad? Yeah, Chad's back there agreeing. He knows what I'm talking about. And I just want to mention the fact that, these kids work just as hard as the athletics do as well. And you may or may not know this, but they only had 20 minutes of actual time on grass with painted lines in the last 4 weeks to prepare for their first game. Imagine yourself being that kid and not feeling as important, because they know I'm one of the parents that's on this school board, and the amount of kids that said to me, "We're just band, we don't matter." We're talking 90 kids this year, and this is a reduced amount of kids. 3 to 4 years ago, our band consisted of 130 students. Post-COVID, we're down to 90, but those 90 kids matter just like every other kid. And I will tell you, when I can walk in there and say, you know what, you're gonna have lines and you're gonna be able to practice, then I'm gonna feel like I've actually contributed in my goal. How we get there, I don't know, but I'm willing to do the work and do what it takes to get there for all of our kids.
Any other comments?
I have. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, after you.
I'd just like to add my voice in support and welcome to Dr. August. Super happy to have you. On a personal note, oftentimes service on this board is emotionally draining. It's frustrating. I come home from meetings and my wife asks why I'm doing this. But occasionally there are moments where I come home and I'm energized and I feel like, we've made a difference and we've done some good. Last week, watching the final bit of the process sort of pan out, the focus groups, the board discussion over our final candidates, and then ultimately getting the news that Dr. August accepted this offer. That got me excited. It got me jazzed. I was feeling really good and I guess sort of happy about my involvement with this board. And I got to say, the feeling was sort of echoed tonight as I was doing the middle school open house walkthrough, and just in those classrooms, visiting with teachers and watching them interact with their students that they're going to have, and man, they're just education is cool and kids are cool and there's so much energy and excitement, and I love to watch these kids' lives transform. And I'm happy to I'm happy that I think that we've hired a long-term transformational leader with sort of real vision for what he wants to accomplish for the district, and I hope that as a board and a community we can help support that vision and make your time here successful and rewarding. So thank you.
And just very briefly, I'd like to thank the administration and the technology group for the planned move from the auditorium into this space. And I'd like to just explain a little about why that was done. It's really done to try to make the process on your part more involved and interactive. And one of the challenges in the auditorium space was that we couldn't fully deploy the technology that's available to facilitate these kinds of meetings like we do in the space at the Career Center, which is a much more modern space. So I want to thank you for your leadership in getting us moved out of the space that was really incompatible to technology, because the cameras and the sound would get lost in there, into a smaller space. But then I would like to encourage us to continue to push the envelope of technology, to make this as open and transparent, as available to the folks at home, and that relates to, for example, if we see PowerPoint presentations, we want to see them full screen. We want to see them on large enough screens so that everyone in the audience can see all the present presentation. We want you to see. And if the failure of that, then it sends the wrong signal, the signal we absolutely do not want to send, which is that they don't really care whether we see this or not. They don't really want us to see this. That's not true at all. We want the large screens. We'd like to, I don't know what the folks at home are seeing, but I know part of the time, because of the not full screens in the PowerPoint, I couldn't see the presentation from here. It's the reason I got up to go see what you were seeing in a moment. And the other thing is getting pushing the technology to get the OWL camera in the center of the room, such that the people from home or the people on Zoom, if that applies, would be able to see around the room, to focus on either the person talking or what's being presented, the presenter here or the screen here. So just thank you for what you've done, and encourage us to continue to push forward. Not so it's nice for us, but so that we facilitate really the best experience we can for the public, and send the true message that we want you involved, we want you here, we want to interact with you, and we want you to we care about your experience. And that's certainly important to me, because I spent 4 years off this board, and I know how it feels to sit out there. Thank you.
Any other comments? Motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry, wait. The board's going to convene into executive session to discuss a student relations matter. Motion to adjourn? Second? Second.